Good evening. We're going to get this meeting started. City of New Haven Meeting Agenda, Community Development Committee. Wednesday, February 18th, 2026, 6 p.m., Board of Alders Chambers. Meeting can be viewed on Board of Alders YouTube. Board of Alders New Haven notice. The Community Development Committee will meet in person at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, February 18th, 2026, in the Board of Alders Chambers located at 165 Church Street, New Haven, second floor, to hear and act upon the following items. LM 2026 0007. Order of the New Haven Board of Aldermen approving the acquisition by the City of New Haven of those properties known as 510 Grand Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut, and 510A Grand Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut, for park purpose, such acquisition to be by way of negotiated sale and purchase, or if necessary, by such other means as may be available to the city of New Haven, which may include the use of an eminent domain. LM-2026-009, order of the New Haven Board of Aldermen authorizing the city of New Haven to apply for and accept a grant in the amount not to exceed $26 million and 0 cents from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant for the Union Square project, formerly known as Church Street South. These items are on file and available for public inspection in the Office of Legislative Services, 165 Church Street, New Haven, per order, Honorable Carmen Rodriguez, Chair, attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need any accessibility-related accommodations, please contact 203-946-7651 or 203-946-8582. In accordance with the City of New Haven COVID-19 guideline, masks are now optional. Public may send comments to public testimony at newhavenct.gov. Before I go on to introduce members of this committee, I am going to be hearing the first item, which is LM-2026-009, the item before us for Church Street South. So I'm going to ask that those presenters join us at the table. And my apologies. I'm going to have, starting from my left, my board committee members introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Mandy Martinelli, I'm Ward 8.
Frank Douglas, Ward 2.
Magda Natal, Ward 16.
Angel Hubbard, Ward 3.
Frank Medenti, Ward 15.
Carmen Rodriguez, Ward 6, and I also want to acknowledge here in the chambers, the President, Aisha Walker-Myers, thank you so much. Majority Leader Richard Furlow, colleague Alder Wingate as well, Alder Sarah Miller. Thank you all for being here. Prior to you all starting your presentation, give me one more second. I'm going to ask that those who have cell phones, please put them on mute. If you need to take a telephone call, we ask you that you head out to the lobby so that all those in chambers can hear the presentation. Again, we thank you this evening for being here. Please mute your phones. If you need to take a call, step outside. Thank you all for being at the table. If you can all give your names and addresses for the record.
Ed LaChance, work for the Housing Authority New Haven, Glendale Group, 360 Orange Street.
Christopher Russo, partner of Pullman and Conley. I represent the Housing Authority on zoning matters.
Jim Miller, acting Executive Vice President for Unsafe Communities, 458 Grand Avenue, New Haven.
Roland Young, I'm a partner at McCarter and English, outside General Counsel for the Housing Authority.
Paul Santos, Newman Architects, Principal, 265 Church Street, 1512.
Mark Wilson, Manager of Neighborhood and Commercial Development for the City of New Haven's Housing Administration and Development.
Okay, thank you this evening, and you can begin.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. We're here requesting authorization of a memorandum of understanding between the city and the Housing Authority to allow for the application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant of $26 million. You may recall that there was a prior planning grant provided by HUD for this development, and it's for the former Church Street South. This is for a portion of the Church Street South development. There's a triangular piece that we can show you in our PowerPoint presentation of it, and it is across from the train station. The plan calls for, the overall development is
2,490,
2,490 units, and this space is about 500
541.
units of housing, with the split of affordable and market rate housing being approximately, I think it's 40/60.
50.
50/40.
271 of affordable and 270 of market rate.
So the MOU calls for, there are portions of the property, small pieces of the property in that triangle that are owned by the city. So this MOU has the city as the co-lead applicant, because we have to be able to demonstrate site control. The remainder of the property is owned by the Housing Authority. So the city and the Housing Authority would come together and demonstrate site control, which is a consideration for the number of points for the application. The MOU also talks about how the city and the Housing Authority will work together to achieve the goals of the CNI planning grant and the implementation grant if it's awarded. So there are various MOUs that have been entered into, that are going to be entered into with various provider groups for people initiatives to make sure that the neighborhoods continue to be involved, former residents of the property continue to be involved, et cetera. There's also a planning group, an initiative for zoning and for, all of the different approvals that are going to be necessary for this to go through. This really is sort of an early phase, if you will, bit of funding that, if awarded, will trigger a more intensive development phase for the overall project, and is absolutely critical. Without this, there really is no application. So the city and the Housing Authority really need to come together. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jim, or...
I think on the fact that this is threshold requirement. I said this is a threshold requirement, that all the land that's part of the application must be owned by either the applicant, which is city community, or by the co-applicant, which is the city of New Haven. That's the threshold requirement.
I think it should be noted that
Have you grabbed the mic? Thank you.
we're really here tonight just to ask for permission to apply for an accepted grant. There'll be a DLDA, the Land Disposition Agreement and Cooperation Agreement that will also come before you as a separate submission later on down the line. But this is, because of time constraints, we really need to get this through so that we're able to apply for an accepted grant.
And then once hopefully the money is awarded, all of those other processes will start in earnest. So we'll be back before you or other committees of the board and the board at some point in the future. I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions on this item?
Anybody else speaking?
No.
Any questions? No.
Any questions on this item, colleagues? Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you.
And we would though like to have this discharge because of time constraints and move to a vote by the full board of holders.
What we're going to do now is we are we're going to move to public testimony so that we can hear from anyone who wishes to speak on this item. Okay? Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you. So we're going to be asking if there's anyone from the public at this time wishing to speak on this item. This again is the Union Square item, formerly known Church Street South. Again, for a second time, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? And for a third and final time, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? Union
Madam
Square.
Chair. I move that,
Nope. Oh, go ahead.
I move that we close the public portion.
Second.
The item has been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much.
Public note.
Yeah.
Public note, you're gonna ask the president to discharge it. That's why you're not gonna do it.
So we will be speaking to Madam President so that we can have this item discharged, so we can have it heard. Thank you, colleagues. We are now going to move on to item 2. If I can have the makers of this item come forward. And as you join us on the table, very similar like our other presenters, we need name and addresses for the record. Thank you. We're going to have you, yes. Okay. Let you all settle in and then we can begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael Piscatelli. I'm the Economic Development Administrator for the city, and I reside at 353 Summit Street in New Haven.
Good afternoon. My name is Haley Simpson. I'm here in my previous capacity as the Deputy Chief of Staff in the Mayor's Office. I reside at 93 Plymouth Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
I'm Beth Fortino, counsel for the City of New Haven, and I'm here from Winnequa LLC.
I'm Giovanni Zinn. I'm the city engineer. I reside at 95 Soundview Terrace.
Malcolm Beeler, Senior Technical Leader at Weston and Sampson, and I reside at 120 Worcester Street.
Carlos Izaguirre, Deputy Economic Development Administrator, 244 McKinley Avenue in Newton.
John Wall, Special Counsel for Development of the City of New Haven. I reside at 295 St. John Street, New Haven.
First, want to thank you and members of the committee for coming out tonight for the opportunity to appear before the committee with what we believe are generationally significant projects. Here tonight at this proceeding is in the River District, but certainly the one before at Union Square. Many of you have been on this journey with the city for many, many years. And although the formal actions before you tonight are just one step of many steps in the process, they are important milestones. And I think in many ways it points toward this shared vision that we've had for the city of both inclusive growth and a quality standard of care that is in every neighborhood of the city. And we appreciate both the time and consideration of these very thoughtful and important matters. The proposed order before you tonight about Mill River concerns. So the proposed order before you tonight concerning English Station is the city's proposal to acquire 510 and 510A Grand Avenue. It's also known as Ball Island, sometimes it's known as English Station, with the intent of building a new public park. And the site is approximately 8.6 to 8.9 acres, depending on which document you might read. And when I said it was a long process, it's in part this entangled, sometimes convoluted, sometimes tumultuous process, whereby the former power plant owned by the United Illuminating Company at the time, and the cleanup standards put forth by the state of Connecticut and the EPA to get the site into a clean condition and back into reuse. Haley will talk about this in a little bit, about just how long that process has been. We'll go through that tonight, the city's context and its rationale behind the initiative overall. We'll also spend some time on the legal and practical considerations. So we'll go through the mechanics of what a city acquisition would look like, preview next steps, because this is part of a long step process. And, given the size of the house tonight, the significance of the initiative, we'd like to leave considerable time for Q&A. We'll listen carefully. There'll be a lot of comments, and if you so choose, Madam Chair, we have an opportunity to respond and make sure we have the right notes for follow-up as well. And that's all in the intent of dimensioning the full picture of this project. So if you kind of flip through the deck a little bit, the Mill River District, for those of you who know about this part of the city, is sort of that area south of East Rock, just to the east of Worcester Square, just to the west of Fairhaven, and just to the north of Long Wharf. Primarily an industrial area from the days of when urban renewal came in and 91 basically severed the Worcester Square neighborhood from Mill River, and never really fully matured as an industrial district, interestingly. When we last did a full plan for the district, 28% of the land was vacant or underused. And that's categorized today, I think it's just build land that's vacant, salt piles, steel piled up here and there, some blighted conditions, graffiti on fencing, that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it's got about 3,000 jobs. And there's been an emerging interest in housing in the district. And the first expression of that when the Glendower team was here earlier, the work that we collectively did on Mill River Crossing, right? So the transition of Farnham Port was sort of like a proof of concept that this district can actually create more housing opportunities for the city, especially when there's so much pressure on housing. We're running out of parking lots to build on, that there's a demand there. And if everything goes according to plan, the next closing would be Clock Factory. And you see 100+ units go into the Clock Factory building as well. But in the overall arc of things, 4,000 or 5,000 housing units have been built in the city over the last several years, and very, very few have been in the Mill River District or even generally east of Interstate 91. So the Urban Act grant, which you can see at page 3 or page 4 of the deck, was a big milestone in this progress of figuring out a way to move forward in this district. And the state was awarding us $5 million to do acquisition of derelict properties, do the pre-development work, the planning to set ourselves up for new growth, and build the infrastructure. So if you pair that with reconnecting communities, the planning grant for the area to the east of 91, Grand Avenue, the work that we're going to do on Grand Avenue, you can kind of see the full picture of what we've called the Mill River Imagine Next program. But in short, it's building a new neighborhood. How do you build a new neighborhood in an area that's highly characterized by brownfields, significant environmental justice concerns, low intensity uses? If you had gone through this district during the snowstorm, you would see 5 trucks from the town of Trumbull sitting on the side of the road waiting for salt. And it just kind of gives you a sense of the type of activity in the district, and which in many ways compromises the ability to create a neighborhood of distinction and of the quality standard that we all aspire to achieve. We think we get there with projects like the Mill River Trail and like the new park we're proposing at the site of English Station, which would provide us opportunities for active and passive recreation. It would be an unparalleled environment. It's a peninsula with the Mill River on both sides. And the conceptual plans have been taking place. We've had 5 community meetings, 3 that basically set the stage for the Mill River area, and then 2 more that were much more specific on the park. Carlos and Giovanni Zinn are here to talk a little bit more about that. The most recent meeting on January 15th kind of gave a more specific presentation on what the park could be. That's not the focus of tonight necessarily, but it is the public purpose for which we're seeking to acquire this property. So I just ask that you consider this in the context of full remediation and cleanup, the broader revitalization goals of the city. And then on page 7, when we reflected on it as your city staff and your sort of public servants across all of the different technical professions of the city, thinking of this project in the context of these citywide community assets. The Q House, now built and open, Trowbridge, which will open this year, the Gulf Street Armory. These journeys, they take a long time, but we deliver these really incredible assets. Now, if you look back on the hearings for all these, Q House did not have a full Board of Alder's chamber. Same with Armory and same with Trowbridge, right? Tonight, almost think about it in terms of like the biggest decisions that the city has made in recent years. Do we save the Coliseum or do we tear it down? Do we build a Gateway Community College that really is a proper community college for our residents in downtown New Haven? Or do we not build a community college? Do we build 100 College Street and take out a highway? All of these decisions were really hard, they're iterative, and so we're gonna walk you through the technical steps and the basis for why we believe this is the right move for English Station. And we'll hear lots of comments on that tonight, and I think the iteration of the process is really what makes New Haven special, right? We think these things through and we make the right decisions to move our community forward. So with that, I think we should get, kind of right into the technical conversation here. So Haley's going to talk a little bit about our monitoring of the state proceedings, which is a key part of getting this site cleaned up.
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks again for having us. In my role as Deputy Chief of Staff on this endeavor with the team, I've been closely monitoring the progress of the UI rape case with PURA. We've made numerous calls, we've made numerous emails just to confirm what the status of that actually is. So from 2020, current cleanup activities have stalled due to disputes over the cost, method for cleanup, occupancy standard, and sequence of activities. In 2025, the Superior Court upheld a $2 million annual penalty levied by PURA against Avangrid, or United Illuminated, as part of the rate case decision. With various appeals, judicial and administrative proceedings are ongoing. For example, in 2025, the court directed DEEP to clarify the cleanup standards for occupancy of the English Station building, a process which is ongoing. So I'll do situation assessment. So for situation assessment, the remediation cost is well beyond the initial estimates, leading to dispute between the Attorney General, DEEP, PURA, Avangrid, various proceedings underway. If you all are familiar with the PURA website, there are a long list of folks who have submitted testimonies on the current standards of the building. So potential changes to the cleanup approach will likely demolition of the building with remaining land usable for storage or commercial use. Remediation of the building materials coupled with the building occupancy standard is a key factor that's at play here. So just to reiterate, the city does not have a formal role in the partial consent order or current litigation.
Thank you, Haley. We'll come back to our assessment of that condition in just a minute with the rest of the mechanics with our legal and environmental team as well. But did want to get a sense for the public purpose of this proposal is to build a new public park, which would go into the portfolio of the city's Parks Department. So the next page, page 10, you can actually see a pretty good look at the building and the situation of it in the middle of the River. And then on the following page, page 11, you can kind of see its relative proximity to the New Haven Green and the setting in the neighborhood. But I'd like Giovanni and the team from engineering the Parks Department just to give a preview of what these community meetings have been like and sort of the status of conceptual design work on the park itself.
Thank you. So thank you again for having us here. I always like telling people that this was one of the issues English Station I worked on when I was an intern in 2005, and we are here in 2026. So it's not new to anyone in New Haven. I think Mike did a really nice job talking about the public purpose here, putting a public purpose as the end post, as the end goal here, that really serves as a central jewel in the larger Mill River district that is so important to providing the housing and jobs that so many of our residents are looking for. And to do that is to create a park, right? Create the central spot that attracts everyone around it. You can, if you look through your packet, you can see some of the existing conditions. You go back and look at all the aerial photos going back as far as 1934, which is the first arrow you can see. It's been fairly similar to what you see today. The coal bunkers you can see now, the remnants of that, and then they were obviously filled with coal. Here's an opportunity to reinvent this spot right in the middle of the Mill River, and between two neighborhoods, right, as we saw in the location picture before. So we had a public process over the last few months and talking about what people want to see in the park. We had an online survey where over 350 people talked about what they saw, went to parks to do. And we, on page 13, you can see sort of the conceptual program of what a park could be here. A park that's designed not only for a variety of different uses, but also in a way that is mindful of the past and remediation that's going on in the park to make sure that the future use is as compatible as possible with all the remediation that's happening, and also cognizant of the fact that this is a site that is low right now and really needs to be raised up out of the floodplain, and that also helps with remediation and provides some topographic variety. No one wants to go to a park that's flat as a pancake, so providing a bit more variety of geography on the park is that. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on this. There's a lot more work to do. As Michael said, there's plenty of other opportunities that will be in front of you to fund this and talk about the design. Tonight's really about the acquisition and getting that seat at the table to determine the fate of this parcel. But we wanted to give you a preview of what that end goal could be here.
Thank you, Giovanni. For those of you who want to learn more about the park, the website has much more detail, and you can kind of thumb through page by page. But we did want to spend some time on the mechanics tonight. So an acquisition of property by the city, this is not the first time we've appeared before a committee asking to purchase property, right? We've done 270 Buxton Boulevard for the hotel that was run by Continuum. We've got the property on Grand Avenue, 424, which is now DPW and the Health Department. We purchased a parking lot over to support 188 Bassett Street and where Adult Ed is going. So there's a process of due diligence that the city follows. Now, this is a 90,000 square foot vacant power plant with PCB contamination, asbestos. It's been vacant since 1992. It's a much more complicated program. So we have brought together a high quality, highly capable project team basically to assist us with this process. Not just to rely on what the state and UI are doing, but to protect the city's interest as we move forward and really step into the fray, really into the arena of this cleanup process and ultimately acquisition and building a community asset. So we'll start with Malcolm Beeler, who's from Weston and Sampson. Malcolm, together with Robert Carr, who's assisting him on the team, Weston & Sampson's a big firm, but Malcolm and Robert, you'll hear from a lot as part of this process, have collectively over 60 years of experience in environmental work. They know this site, so we're really grateful to have Malcolm on the team, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the scope of work, your familiarity, and just generally walk through the environmental side.
Yes, we've been contracted by this, to be part of this team, and, we're basically three functions that we'll be serving as. The first one will be performance of phase one site assessment, environmental site assessment, where we'll run through the different areas of concern at the site, update if there are others that we believe that should be included, and basically provide the city with a scorecard of, what are the issues and what has been addressed, what still remains, and what work is out there, what the holes are in the current assessment. We'll also provide peer review for the city during the process. Look at the documents that are being prepared by consultants to UI and help with the city with their understanding and how they conform with the both the state and the federal regulations as it pertains to PCBs. And we'll also provide technical guidance to the city as part of the overall program. Our familiarity with the site, TRC is the LEP firm that serves UI, but they put the investigation program and writing of remedial action plans out to bid, and Weston and Sampson performed that work. I was the project manager, so we did nearly $1 million worth of investigation of the site and writing of remedial action plans for exterior to the building and generation of contract documents. So we're very, very familiar with site conditions and what's to be encountered, and also the work that needs to be done to remediate the property.
Thank you, Malcolm, and I appreciate your work on the project. The second big bucket, so when we bring to you a development agreement, there is a whole, it's like 5 pages on environmental protections that go into our development agreements. That work is actually furnished by our outside environmental counsel, which is Winnick Law. So sometimes you'll see Nancy Mendel, and tonight Beth Fortino from the same firm has assisted us over the years with environmental liability protection, recognizing, as Malcolm said, we cannot rely solely on DEEP and UI, but we need to put in the right mechanisms and protections for the city, given the nature of the partial consent order. So I'd like Beth to talk a little bit about that process and what the state provides to cities and towns and any owners of property, such that transactions can actually happen, right? To demystify the challenge of cleaning up a site and putting it back into use. So Beth, if you could take it from there.
Good evening. My name is Beth Fortino, and I'm outside environmental counsel for the city of New Haven. I'm a partner at Winnick Law in New Haven, and my firm has been outside environmental counsel to the city for over 20 years. I personally have been working on city projects for over 10 years. My firm has assisted with obtaining environmental liability protection for a variety of contaminated properties in the city. As the city's environmental attorney, we will assist the city with choosing an environmental liability relief program for the acquisition of English Station. There are 2 main options. The first, the Abandoned Brownfield Cleanup Program, known as the ABC program. The second is the Brownfield Remediation and Revitalization Program, known as the BRRP. Both programs would afford the city state environmental liability protection. Both programs are exempt from the Transfer Act and the new release-based regulations that will replace the Transfer Act. The ABC program would require the city to enter a voluntary remediation program, which we call 133X. The BRRP program has its own statutory timeframes that must be followed. The BRRP cannot be entered if there is a consent order, so unless the consent order on the property gets resolved prior to the city taking title, the ABC program is a likely candidate. The city would need to apply and be accepted prior to taking title to the property, and the liability protection would be effective upon taking title to the property. There's also federal liability protection called the Small Business Liability Relief and Brownfield Revitalization Act, which exempts the city from Superfund liability upon taking title to the property. Both the state and the federal require a phase 1, which Malcolm has discussed, in order to enter these programs. Under the PCO, UI is the creator of the contamination on the property and responsible for cleaning up the property to industrial commercial standards. They are taking on that responsibility, and at the completion, they will have closed out all of their releases on the property. The city would comply with whatever liability program they enter and then environmentally close out the property and bring the property up to the park standards.
Thank you very much, Beth. And part of the process here is selecting they'll screen the process and identify the right program which would match with the acquisition. So we enter that program for our, for the protection of the city and the city's interests, if you will. Now to the acquisition itself. So the order before you was all of 1 page, but it sets up a process to negotiate with the owners of the property. So it's sort of, people coming at this fresh or not sort of following the 20-year odyssey of this project would think naturally UI must own the property because it's their power plant, they're responsible for the cleanup. But actually they had sold it and sold it to a company called Quinnipiac Energy years ago. And then Quinnipiac Energy sold it again. So we are negotiating with the current owners of the 2 properties, 510 and 510A Grand Avenue. And John Ward is here, our inside counsel, special counsel of economic development, who could speak specifically to how the city approaches the acquisition and then following the process set forth in state law.
Good evening. as Mike explained earlier, we often come in front of you and ask to acquire land or dispose of land, obviously, because that's within the purview of the Board of Alders. In this particular case, we have a very simple order in front of you, which is an order that we can acquire the property. And usually that is as far as we need to go. In this particular case, we are planning a park, which is a public purpose, and so we split the order itself into first my negotiations, and hopefully that will produce a good result based on our appraisal and their appraisal. We hope to get our appraisers together to narrow the gap between the two right now, and hopefully we can come up with an agreed sale and purchase price. In which case we can acquire the property. But if it's not possible to do that, then we would want to be able to use eminent domain. Now, the initial negotiations are part of the requirements of eminent domain. We will be negotiating in good faith. But we do need to acquire this property, otherwise, obviously, we can't have this municipal benefit, and therefore, in case it's not possible to reach a solution with the current owners, we would like to have the ability to use eminent domain.
Thank you, John. And of course, the parallel to that is how much is it going to cost the city? What is the exposure to the city's balance sheet? How does this all fit together? So if you turn page 18, I want to provide the committee with our estimated cost drivers by major category, right? So tonight we're here on the acquisition, but then there's also the remediation, the cleanup of the property itself. Then there's the handoff, meaning UI will walk away when they've completed the cleanup to a certain standard, and we need to bring it to a park standard. And that's one of the reasons why the work for Beth and Malcolm is so important in the design work, to make sure that there's efficiencies there, to make sure that as we lift the property from what is traditionally commercial industrial standard, capped, sealed, safe, that we make sure that it works with whatever the park design is, right? And then finally, there's the construction of the park, actually building the park. Those four cost buckets, the ones in blue will be the city's responsibility, either via city funds, capital operating funds, or grants that come directly to the city. The remediation, which is bucket 2, is the responsibility of UI. Now let's go through each one of them individually. The acquisition, our estimated range is somewhere between 2 and 13 million, and that's based on the appraisals we have to date. And so the order before you, that's the range in cost, and what John is working on, narrowing that cost to what we believe is to fair value. And in Connecticut, as well as the United States, following the Supreme Court case in the Kelo decision, use of eminent domain for public purpose or redevelopment or whatever particular use that governments have for a particular property, even if it's a border wall in Texas, you have to follow this process and provide fundamental fairness to the property owner. So that's how John has described, and we're giving you the range of what we believe that will cost. The remediation, often, if you read the old documents related to the original partial consent order between the state and UI, the number 30 million was put out there. And UI has invested quite a bit of money already in this cleanup. The cleanup is far in excess of $30 million, and UI is bound to pay for the cleanup. And so that relates both to the land cleanup, but it's also dealing with the building, which has a significant number of contaminants, both in the building materials and in the building generally, just from the day and the nature of a power plant. That number can be the floor of 30 million, anywhere up to 60 million. So when I described earlier, and Haley described that long process, in some ways it's not surprising, right? This is a big number, and there's a big fight over that number. The third bucket, which is the handoff, is a number we believe is somewhere between $1 and $5 million. And essentially, the partial consent order brings the site to a commercial industrial standard, essentially light use, right? So if it's a warehouse, if it's an industrial building, the state grades that to one standard of cleanup. But if it's residential or a park, it has to be a higher standard. The site has to be really safe for use by the public over a long period of time. And so that, we don't get there fully with the UI cleanup. We actually have to do a set of handoff work. So it could be more paving, it could be higher fill, it could be any series of what you'll hear down the road when Malcolm and Mr. Carr really dive into the work of what they call the engineered controls. And those engineered controls will seal the property to make sure that it's safe for use by the general public and for use by the park. And then the last bucket is the park construction, which we estimate somewhere between 20 and 30 million. So the number of 45 million that was in the papers is basically the midpoint of construction of the park. And so, you know, when you on one hand, you say, wow, 80 million, 100 million, big numbers, right? But in the context of what we're facing, which is dealing with a massive power plant, a large piece of property, not inconsistent with what you've seen major reinvestments, redevelopments of power plant projects around the country. Kind of the reason why power plants aren't built in cities anymore. Like, it is just big, hard projects. But it gives you a sense, and we wanted to give you a range of, you know, what we're asking the board to go on this journey about. Next, go to kind of section 3 of the presentation. Talk a little bit about next steps. You know, we've described where we are and then where we go next, right? So our head start is we brought on a professional team that understands the building, understands how we dealt with brownfields here in the city, and where we go next. So it's sort of this layered approach of, you know, negotiating with the state, negotiating with the property owners, designing a park that works in the handoff, making sure the community voice is heard, and we've captured all of the different ideas. And so I'd like Carlos to talk a little bit about the community meetings we've done so far, but then what we foresee as we head into 2026 in earnest.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. I don't have a whole lot that I think most folks have hit on a lot of the community engagement and sort of the enabling projects. But I think that that's an important point to note is that this, you know, the work we're doing at Ball Island English Station is not occurring in a vacuum. So we're working on this Imagine Next Mill River project, which is much larger than just Ball Island. And so you know, we spent a lot, like Mike mentioned, we've done 5 meetings, community meetings just on the Mill River District alone since spring 2024. We expect to do another one in March. We'll be back out in Fairhaven to talk more about the park concepts, looking to do a Fairhaven Middle probably. And also, you know, I think Mike mentioned, and a lot of folks behind me in the room were really instrumental in getting us the $7 million to redo Grander Avenue. That project is also underway. The Economic Development Department and in conjunction with engineering have the avenue being surveyed as we speak. And later this year, we'll start to bid that project out, and that's a redo of Grand Avenue from end to end. Well, starting in the Fairhaven side actually. So we'll start at the river on Ferry Street, and we'll on Front Street, and we'll move it all the way down towards ultimately State Street. So that you'll be seeing that project get underway later this year. Similarly, we're using that Urban Act money. We're working on the Mill River, getting the Mill River Trail completed. Same thing. We're spending a lot when we're not working on this. We're spending a lot of our days talking to the property owners, the easements that we need to finish the Mill River Trail, specifically the portion south of Grand Avenue to take it all the way down to Quinnipiac River. So that's ongoing as well. Involves engineering, parks, economic development, and city plan as well. So really a group effort on that. And then, you know, and then it's worth another meeting. You know, we'll be here again with the LDAs for you know, land disposition agreements for River Street. But we have you know, a bunch of different projects going on at River Street. How do we redevelop 100 River? You know, how do we have some other 46 River, I believe, the city owns. So we have a lot of, so these projects are all sort of working in tandem, and city team being what it is, it's not, you know, we're not a large team, you know, we're all working on these projects, you know, sort of moving from one project to the next during the course of the day. So that's sort of what to expect. So you'll see a lot more, and we do community meetings on all of these, you know, and not maybe, this one is particularly robust. We've had over 150 people just since the October meeting on Mill River, which essentially was a lot about English Station. Had 150 people at these last 3 meetings at least, and yeah, so we'll continue So you'll continue to hear a lot more of these projects. And this is a particularly complicated one. I obviously, given the size and the uniqueness of the site, but a lot of these other projects that are going to really, we think, improve Mill River for the residents and for the city are also underway at the same time. They may not be getting as much publicity.
Thank you.
Another big step in the journey is working with our state partners. I think our insight here is both the state and UI want to resolve after many years of being unable to resolve. So Haley, even though you've moved to a new department, will maintain a high level of monitoring and support here. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that process.
Yes, so what that process looks like, we have had numerous conversations with Pura. So they serve as just, I would say, the observer. So they cannot provide us with any details that are not already public. We have to watch the cases. Currently the court issues a notice or issues a decision, then it's an appeal. It's a constant back and forth, and this has been going on for years. I mean, I've only been here coming up on a year, and there have been at least 6. So that just demonstrates how insane this is to keep going back and forth with this case. So just to lay it out, and I'm sure Michael will wrap this up, the city doesn't currently have a seat at this table. It is, of course, with UI, it is with DEEP, it is with Pura. This resolution provides us with the opportunity to have a seat at the table. It gives us more of a grounding to have that conversation and to sort of insert ourselves to be able to perform this work. And then I think I'm turning it over to Mike.
Yep. And I don't think we'll go necessarily through every one of our technical team members on next step, but suffice to say, as your professional staff, we have high confidence in the approach to build a public park as the appropriate land use, given the circumstance of a kind of an island in the middle of a flood zone, in this circumstance here, that park and the centrality of it, it really elevates the entire Mill River district as a new neighborhood because of the centrality of this particular island. It will be an amazing public space to be on this island and look out over the Q Bridge and back into the city. It will be generationally significant to build the park on this land. Same with our appraisal and the negotiation related to the value of the property. We've reviewed the owner's appraisal, we've reviewed our appraisal. We have confidence in how we arrived at our number and the approach that we'll take to negotiate fair market value, as well as bringing the right technical team members to protect the city in terms of liability, and also to provide the right level of peer reviewing, recognizing we are not responsible for this cleanup. We are responsible to peer review it and ensure that the handoff condition is something that we can work with and that we aren't waiting for years and years because the building is still standing. And then to Haley's point, you feel the momentum in the state of Connecticut to wrestle to the ground these old power plants in much the same way, I date myself here, the landfills. If you remember the solid waste landfills in like on Middletown Avenue, they were open dump landfills. And you just don't see that anymore, right? Like these landfills have largely been capped, they've been addressed. And so there was a certain sense of dealing with this large issues of environmental contamination in our cities. In Connecticut, Manresa Island down in Norwalk, it's a private ownership group. They're going to save the building and build a park around it. In Bridgeport, they just took the building down. So they just took this old power plant down and they'll redevelop in a manner consistent with the vision for Bridgeport, just to give you a sense that this is sort of the next wave in the state of dealing with these dormant, vacant power plants, if you will. And then I think more, to the point that the large crowd in the room, Alder is very interested in this, city staff, taking a little bit more of a passionate approach as well. I think, when we've talked about projects here in the city that matters, the staff, the community cares about the work. Like we really care about where the city is going, and we take that work very seriously. And if you look broad scale at this, this building has been vacant for 20 plus years in this community. And if we did nothing and sat back and allowed it to just be a warehouse, after the community had to look at this thing for how many years, that would not be good public service. And our best approach here is to engage and build something of meaningful significance. More broadly, in terms of environmental justice, one of the board's goals, we are down to very few vexing brownfields in the city. So with the great work of the city staff, council, support of the board, the community, our development partners, we've addressed almost all of the big brownfield concerns in the city. Science Park being most notable in construction right now. To deal with Russell Street out in the Fairhaven Heights neighborhood. Have to deal with English Station. The old gas company, remember the gas tanks over at corner of Chapel and East, is still a heavily contaminated site, and a number of others around the city with some level of contamination. But as a community, we have tackled a big issue, which is vacant, contaminated, cancer-causing parcels. And this is the next one. Similarly, what we're seeing in the city's park system came out over and over in the comprehensive plan conversation, so Vision 2034, about providing every community in the city with access to great parks. And so when we bring you the more formality of the park itself, we're building the visioning that we heard through the community planning process to actually create great neighborhoods, places of distinction, sense of care, and a quality standard, but parks, having parks for our community. And then finally, the point of building a neighborhood in the Mill River. As economic development professionals, we are about jobs, we are about taxes, and we're about places for people. And this neighborhood is out of balance. We have a number of heavy industrial uses, got coastal influences with the flood zone, properties that have sat for a long period of time, just can't seem to unlock any sort of momentum in this district. But we have unlocked momentum citywide. So even to the point of Union Square earlier today, we're kind of running out of parking lots to work on. We're running out of land that's easily developed on a relative scale because there's no demolition involved, it's just a parking lot. It gives a runway for someone to build new housing. If we do not open up more space for development, we are going to get even more intense pressure on the land uses we have. And maybe a 2-story building is more valuable as a 5-story building. And then we will all feel the pressure of displacement. Every one of you will get those calls, right? If someone's rent goes up, the idea of creating more space is actually becoming a national conversation. Like you read these articles about building new cities to actually accommodate the need for housing. And here we have this neighborhood, with Worcester Square, you've got a great residential community, great environment, great setting, then nothing, and then you go into Fairhaven, another wonderful neighborhood. So building in is a great opportunity for us to stand up to the housing crisis as well. And many other people in our city team and around the community are doing great work in that space. And by building this park, you can see an opportunity and a line of sight to creating a great neighborhood around it. So with that, I'm going to pause, invite any Q&A from the members of the committee. And I know you get a lot of testimony tonight, and we'll be here throughout.
Any questions from colleagues? Alderman Dempsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for your presentation. I just have a.
Before you begin,
Yes.
I'd like you to please.
Oh, I'm not allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few questions. First off, Mr. Piscatelli, the state grant cited for this project is $5 million. The estimated cost for acquisition and remediation is at least $25 million. Where is the written commitment for the remaining $20 million, and what happens if remediation costs double once demolition begins?
Right. So let's take that in sections. So the $5 million Urban Act with real support from the state of Connecticut, recognizing that what sites make the most sense and how much they'll cost. So we have good flexibility in that grant program, and I gave you an insight as to the range of costs we think will be out there for the acquisition of the property. We believe we are in range of the Urban Act grant, so $2 million on the low end, $13 million on the high end. We've reviewed the appraisals, and we are confident we're within the Urban Act grant number significantly. And if not, we come to you, we have to get authority from the Board of Alders for additional funds, which we would need to bring to you as either a capital grant request or some sort of ordinance amendment on the budget side of things. Or we get another grant So we asked the state for additional money to supplement that urban act, which is not uncommon as the state wrestles with these power plants. So those are just an insight into the strategy on the acquisition side. On the cleanup side, as Beth said, that is the responsibility of UI. And that fight is happening in Hartford right now.
If I may. By acquiring the site via negotiated sale or eminent domain, does the city of New Haven assume any environmental liability for legacy PCB contamination found on site? After all is said and done, and what is our maximum financial exposure?
Let's take the first part of the question. So let me just repeat it, make sure I get it right, because I want to answer it correctly.
If we acquire the site by eminent domain or a negotiated sale, and then there's legacy PCB contamination on site, what is our maximum financial exposure?
Okay. So on the first part, as Beth said, we are entering a liability protection program. So I'll let Beth start with what that protection program looks like, which ties with the acquisition. And then Malcolm can speak to, I wouldn't necessarily call it legacy contaminants, but what engineered controls look like should the cleanup plan include an engineered control.
Yeah, so the liability protection program would give the city liability protection from any claims from the state or third party related to the contamination on the property. By the time the city acquires the property, the city would have full knowledge of what's on the property. The UI is required to clean up the property to industrial commercial standards. So once UI leaves, they have remediated the property and there's no legacy issue on the property. The only difference is with the handover of having to comply with the park standards. But there's no legacy PCB or contamination issues that would be left over because the property is in compliance with all laws at that time.
And one more, just for fun. So this is a final question. It's in two parts. Cities like Providence and Austin have turned old power plants into economic engines. Why was the option to preserve and repurpose English Station rejected in favor of demolition?
So I'll answer that two ways. The first is, as you know, over the many years, the city staff pushed hard for the preservation and redevelopment of English Station. And in many ways, the PCO dating back to 2015 was about the cleanup of English Station. But the text of the PCO makes no mandate or requirement of UI to save English Station. It requires UI to clean up Ball Island. So in many ways, the decision, and we believe the decision is final at this point, to demolish English Station was made at the state level as they wrestled with the cost, the complexity of the cleanup, and the line of sight on how you would deal with both materials in the building and embedded in the building. And I'll let Malcolm speak to it a little bit more specifically because he has a deep understanding of what this building is all about, particularly on the PCB side.
For the interior of the building itself, they've done some testing for PCBs and building materials, and they found that much of the paint and caulks and other building materials in there contain PCBs, both regulated by the federal regulations and covered under state guidance documents. The way they are not an authorized use under the federal regs or the state guidance. Therefore, they must be removed. And by the time, if the entire interior of the structure is painted with these materials, by the time you abate them and also clean up the building materials, because the PCBs will leach into there, you don't leave much behind. Like all of the great big huge historic windows, they all have exterior caulk, and the caulk would need to be removed and then the brick around it. And you end up with little swaths of brick between the windows itself. So to fully comply with the federal and state guidance by abating the building is problematic.
Madam Chair, that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Any other colleagues? I have a question. So you said that the demolition of the English Station was decided years ago, and it was decided on the cleanup for UI? I wasn't really clear.
Forgive me if I misspoke. So in 2015, when the partial consent order was put together, conceptually around the community, staff, all of us understood that to be the cleanup of the English Station building, cleanup of English Station. But the text of the partial consent order says nothing about saving English Station. It says something along the lines of bringing Ball Island up to the commercial industrial standard. So UI has looked at this and what they call the occupancy standard. Is it a low occupancy of the building? Is it a high occupancy of the building? So in 2024, about this, professional tussle over the high occupancy or low occupancy standard, DEEP issued this declaratory ruling which said, UI, you have to clean it to a high occupancy standard. And UI replied in, paraphrasing here, we don't have to clean up the building at all because this is Ball Island. And second, the state, you're misinterpreting what the PCO says. We only have to do it to a low occupancy standard. Basically, clean it up a little bit and people can't go in the building anyway, something along those lines. And that declaratory ruling is going through the court process that Haley described and was remanded back to DEEP, basically what you might call a tie. Like the court said, we don't know. I mean, we're not professionals in environmental, high standard, low standard, deal with it. And that's the proceeding that's happening now at the state level, which is, as Malcolm said, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line that people can feel safe in this building, which is leading every insight that we have that the building will be torn down. And that opens the door for a large warehouse, a storage yard, any sort of commercial industrial use, because UI only has to bring it up to the commercial industrial standard. So forgive me, in 2015, it was sort of understood they're to clean the building. And then as you roll forward, it's been, each iteration of the project, more and more the building is coming down. And the most recent would have been in 2017, 2018, when the front building was torn down. And UI said, we're tearing the front building down. We put up a fuss over it. We made them go through the 90-day delay of demolition. The building came down. And UI reminded us, there's no obligation for us to save these buildings.
I think it's worth also just clarifying what the low occupancy that UI was proposing under what Mike talked about. It's 6.8 hours a week, right? So to be able to only safely use a building for 6.8 hours a week is something that is hard to fathom as something that brings a lot of peace of mind, or a lot of the uses that we've heard so much about, in all the public testimony over the last few months. And so that's, I think, one of the fundamental things and why we want to have a seat at this table is to make sure that, the multinational company that is responsible for this isn't able to leave us with something that can be used 6.8 hours a week, right? That is something that is an asset for all of us.
Alder Douglas?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So there's been no remediation done to the property at all?
No, the UI initiated cleanup mainly in the front portion. So considerable part of the front portion, what you would see from Grand Avenue, there has been cleanup activities. And I could find it, I pulled the most recent monthly report on how much UI believes they spent to date. And remediation activities, they've invested $10.8 million of a total of $17.7 million total spent on remediation activities. And then the building sits there in the back as they fight over the testing and the occupancy standard as we've discussed.
Entire property.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Alder Manelli?
I'm just more looking for a clarifying question. We're stating that UI would have to pay for all the remediation costs, even if it were to double in cost. They would still have to cover all of the remediation costs, correct?
That's correct. To a commercial industrial standard.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Okay. So in UI not cleaning up the building, if they were to take it down, what do they do with it? Do they bury it? Do they take it away?
So
How does
this,
that work?
so this came up actually in one of the community meetings about, being environmentally responsible with the materials, right? So, sometimes you might hear some of our demo professionals say like, what has to go out hot, or what can be sourced and reused, and what can be sorted. Maybe Malcolm, you could talk a little bit about what that process is like when they characterize what the remains look like.
Yeah, so for the demolition, first you have to do the abatement of asbestos, and so far they've taken out the friable asbestos, but they still have to deal with the non-friable materials. And then the process includes either abatement of the PCBs and removing those as a separate waste stream, which has to go out to an approved landfill that has a permit to take materials of that type, or they drop a large section of it and ship the whole entire portion of it off for disposal off-site. With the presence of PCBs in the building materials, they will not be able to bury them on the property. That's not going to be allowed. That would require permitting from regulatory agencies, which is not going to happen.
And then you talked about using materials to remediate, right? And so how is that done?
I could summarize, but in the interest of time, I'll let Giovanni talk a little bit about what the handoff condition is like, the engineered control.
Sure. So, and there's sort of two things that you have to do in remediation, and you can jump in as well. One is for higher contaminant levels areas, you have to dig it out and properly dispose of that, right? PCBs in particular, there's a hot spot, you have to dig down to 15 feet, dig it all out, take it off site, and responsibly dispose of it. There are other lower levels of contaminations of different contaminants where you have to render them very inaccessible, right? This can often take the form of 4 feet of fill, or an engineered control like a parking area or asphalt or concrete. Sometimes in other projects, you put contaminated materials under a building, and therefore it's not accessible to people, especially for contaminants that don't move around, right? So these are the different techniques that are used throughout the industry in Connecticut, across the United States, to render places safe, so that if you're someone going to the park, your kids running around on the grass, there's no way that they will come in contact with any of the lower level things that are left deep underground at that point, or under an engineered control. Unless there's anything more to add.
And I just want to add that it's key for the remediation contractor to work with the park design for brownfields redevelopment like this, so that you have the two of them working together as most efficiently to be most cost efficient and deliver the best product for the community. So the city's very aware of all the things that have to happen, and then the remedial contractor just prepares the language to get it approved through the agencies that would need to approve.
I just have one more question.
Go ahead.
Once by acquiring BoA Island, or starting the process to acquire BoA Island, and then move you closer to the street. Does that in any way stop the process of what's happening with UI with that? I know that you answered this before, but I really want to be clear in that UI would still be held liable for their portion of the cleanup. And this kind of a two-part question, and are these programs that you were discussing sort of the buffer between what UI will be covering and the remainder of the environmental cleanup? Would it cover the remainder of that?
So we believe the city's acquisition of the property facilitates a line of sight to resolving the outstanding issues, because we're providing clarity on proposed reuse. We're providing clarity on what an handoff condition might look like so that we can align and stop sort of, this long-standing dispute over a high occupancy, low occupancy cleanup standard, which has, in some ways you could argue delayed the cleanup over many, many years. And if UI is a publicly held company, you can sort of push that out a little bit as a cost bucket, because this is not a shareholder cost. It's not a ratepayer charge. This is a company charge to get this thing cleaned up. So it provides everyone sort of a layer of clarity that, okay, this is what we're all pointing toward, and let's find a route to home that makes sense.
Alderman Van
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my last one, I promise. Mr. Piscatelli, if we acquire land through eminent domain for park purposes, are we legally locked into that use? Will it prevent us from ever building, say, a housing or a job center? And what power would this body have over future uses on that site?
So the Board of Alders, as you know, is both the zoning authority for the city, the budget authority for the city. So you, through this meeting tonight and down the road, we're on this journey together, right? But what I mentioned earlier was really important, which was the Kelo decision and the Supreme Court case out of the New London taking, which is a fundamental point of law, fundamental fairness to the property owner. We are acquiring the property on the basis of its fair market value. If we choose to condemn it, if we can't get to a resolved price, a negotiated price, and why the order includes the condemnation. If we take the property, it is a public park, and that's and I think we all we're going to adhere to the law now.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from?
One more.
Okay. Alderman Martinelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so if we are, UI would have to clean up to an industrial standard, and then it would be cleaned up to a residential. So there would be no limits on how long you could spend on that island at that point. It's cleaned up to residential, like the 6.8 hours in the building is because of where it would be contaminated. If it was a playground, could children be there all day, and we would have no worries.
And there are great success stories around the country of these really difficult, vexing brownfields. Sometimes they're power plants, sometimes they're industrial facilities, but they are amazing parks and safe because of either the engineered controls or the full cleanup to render anything that was harmful inaccessible to the public.
Also want to note that once we clean it up, we do have to also have like a management plan to make sure we maintain the standards that it needs to be. And I mean, that's regulatory, so it holds us to that. And of course, we would have to always go back and make sure it's still to the standards.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This one is way out there, but I want to ask it anyways. Thank you. So in the remediation process, let's just say 20 years from now, kids are out there playing, and then we come upon some cases of cancer attributed or associated from being in that park. Who's responsible?
So I think you're describing a scenario that's pretty horrible, right? So we have a responsibility to make sure through our professionals to make sure that there is no risk that leads to that outcome, right? So there's the practical. On the legal, we have liability protections, which Beth described. But I think, your question is more the practical, which is we
So
all.
that's like a warranty with the remediation company, sort of?
So I think, everyone wants guarantees, right? 100% everything. But we are going this with our eyes wide open. We have the right technical professionals working on it. We would monitor across the board. One thing I think, to your point about going too far afield, you've got some of the best environmental professionals in the United States that work at Connecticut Deep. Like they were cutting edge on the law, the new release-based standards that have been put forth. They are excellent. And I think sometimes we don't, give enough credit to the people that we work with. there's a reason why this fight has gone on for 20, 25 years. So someone from DEEP was here to say, yeah, because we're protecting the public interest and we're not gonna roll over. And I think although we look at it as like an odyssey and a frustration and that how many people have let generationally look at this mess, you know, if you were a DEEP professional, like, yeah, we're gonna get this right.
If I may, just to ask for clarification, it sounds like your question was more from an equitable lens.
Yes.
Okay, so to that point, that is, of course, conversations that we have raised a number of times. That is always part of the conversation. That is always something that is at the forefront of our conversations as it relates to this. That is why we are deeply concerned about the current state of it, and we want the ability to be able to acquire so we can bring it up, because right now they do have that same risk that you are referring to, right? So we want to make sure we minimize the risk as best as possible to make sure we're not running into that from an equitable lens.
And if I may, just really quickly on the remediation and making sure that it's done correctly, right? This is a situation that has a ton of eyeballs on it, right? It's not you let the remediation contractor go do their thing and then you call them back if there's a problem. There's constant inspection. There's reports to EPA. There's DEP is involved. There's UI will have people inspecting. The designer has to inspect. You know, we'll be involved with the peer review, looking at everything that's generated out of there as well. And that's typical of all sort of high risk, construction. When you build a bridge, like we test every bit of metal that goes into the bridge. We test the concrete. We test a lot of the materials to make sure we're getting the correct materials and they perform the way we're expecting. And that's, I think, a similar process for remediation to make sure that that 4 feet that we need is there, right? It's not, it's 4:30 on Friday, we just dumped 2 feet and got out of there. No, it's 4 feet, right? And that's the type of trust and control we have to have in order to make the risk of the scenario that you talked about that makes it so, it's terrible, is zero.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? So this evening, to be clear, we are discussing acquiring the land. You're not discussing a park, a pool, or anything like that. Today, what we're hearing is acquiring the property that is all park. That's what we're here for today. So we thank you very much for your presentation. No other questions, colleagues? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Very well.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Excellent presentation.
At this colleagues, at this time, I'm going to have us take a recess before we go into public testimony. Thank you. Thank you.
Left or right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Oh, you got fingers on the mouth. It's never a good sign. It's never a good sign.
Or the other. Big. Order. Those are belong to them. I can't take those. I know, right? Oh, you'll get it. Look at the jacket. They already have it. You can order today. You know right now. No, it's so funny. Thank you. Easy. Thank you. Right, 23.
Where? Oh, that's my, listen. How I know it's like at the youth center. Many moons ago. Probably before you. Okay. Don't play. I need some. Yeah. Jump your coffee, go to the back in the
It's really good.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this one, that was the Thank you, man. Yeah, so never raise your hand, say thank
Yeah.
Ali. Ali. Just make sure your phones are muted.
And if you need to take a call, we ask that you step out into the hallway to handle it. Presentation. So at this time, we are going to have, prior to opening the public portion, I'm going to have Chief Coughlin and Director Bond come forward to the table, please.
Director Bond and Chief Coughlin. Name and address for the record, please.
If you'd like, just grab the microphones.
All right.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Dan Coughlin, Acting Fire Chief, 75 Warren Street, New Haven.
Good evening, Health Director Marissa Bond, 424 Chapel Street, New Haven.
I'll, Madam Director, go first.
Okay. Good evening. I actually don't know if you have a copy of my written testimony, but I do have a copy here. Let me know if that's sufficient. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, Chair Rodriguez and members of the Community Development Committee. I respectfully submit testimony in support of the proposed acquisition of English Station properties at 510 and 510A Grand Avenue for redevelopment as a public park in a community recreation space. As Director of Health for the City of New Haven, I offer this testimony from the perspective of population health, prevention, and environmental justice. I also speak as someone who was raised in this community and who has spent more than 2 decades working in public health with a focus on prevention, environmental conditions, and health equity. This perspective informs my support for the proposed acquisition. I also serve on the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. The New Haven Health Department is responsible for protecting and improving the health of over 130,000 residents through environmental health, enforcement, school health, emergency preparedness, and community health initiatives. Our mission is to ensure that every resident has the opportunity to live in a safe, healthy, and equitable environment. The conditions in which people live, work, and play remain among the strongest predictors of long-term health outcomes, and this is the principle that guides my testimony today. To understand the public health significance of this proposal, it is important and vitally important to consider the history of the English Station site. The English Station power plant was decommissioned in 1992, as stated earlier, and has remained vacant and contaminated for more than 3 decades. 3 decades. During this period, surrounding neighborhoods, particularly Fairhaven and adjacent areas, have experienced limited access to the waterfront, continued environmental burden, and lost opportunities for safe recreational space. The prolonged vacancy of this industrial site represents not only a land use concern, but also a long-standing environmental and community health issue. English Station is widely recognized as a defining element of New Haven's industrial heritage, and we recognize that. Responsible redevelopment should include structural evaluation, environmental safety assessment, and feasibility analysis to determine whether any elements can be preserved or interpreted in a way that is consistent with public health protections and long-term sustainability. The action before the committee concerns acquisition of the property. Acquisition establishes public control and enables coordinated environmental remediation and structured planning to proceed under state oversight. Environmental remediation requirements remain governed by the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, known as DEEP, and applicable regulatory standards, regardless of ownership, is required. Acquisition does not predetermine final design, specific amenities, or long-term operation decisions. These matters are evaluated subsequent phases through public process and funding review. To be consistent, there's enough public health evidence and public health research that consistently demonstrate that access to green space is associated with improved mental health, increased physical activity, and reduced stress and lower risk of cardiovascular disease and premature mortality. Accordingly, investments in remediation and accessible recreational environments function as evidence-based prevention strategies that support population health and long-term community well-being. Likewise, local indicators further reinforce the importance of these investments in New Haven. Childhood asthma prevalence has historically exceeded in neighborhoods impacted by older housing stock, traffic corridors, and historic industrial activity. Environmental conditions, housing quality, and neighborhood infrastructure all contribute to these outcomes. For these reasons, remediation of contaminated land combined with the expansion of safe public space represents a meaningful upstream intervention that can improve long-term health trajectories. In addition to these health indicators, equity in recreational access remains an important consideration. Although many New Haven residents live within recreational space available, disparities still remain in the amount of park acreage and quality of these recreational space among lower income neighborhoods and communities of color. Expanding high quality, safe, and accessible recreational space directly addresses these inequities and supports healthier communities. As future uses of this site are evaluated, decisions should be guided by feasibility analysis, environmental standards and sustainability, and continued meaningful community engagement. This project is further strengthened by the prospect of significant private and philanthropic partnership. Public reporting indicates that philanthropic funding for up to $10 million has been pledged towards potential recreational components associated with broader redevelopment. And so these concepts and any other capital scopes, long-term operating sustainability and maintenance planning should continue to be evaluated transparently through established municipal budgeting processes and phased implementation review. Consideration of equitable access also requires examining these long-term community impacts. For decades, residents, advocates, and preservationists and elected leaders have invested a sustained effort in envisioning a better future for this site, so I do not want to disregard that. Beyond the immediate benefits, research and practice consistently show that redevelopment of long blighted industrial properties can catalyze neighborhood stabilization, economic activity, and improved environmental conditions. So transforming English Station into a public asset will restore waterfront access, improve environmental conditions, and provide lasting health and quality of life benefits for residents. In closing, these considerations returns us to the central question that's before you this evening. That this question before us is about acquiring, but it's not simply whether to acquire this property, but the question is whether we are willing to turn a 30-year symbol of disinvestment into a generational investment in health, safety, and opportunity for New Haven residents. And for these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to support this acquisition. Thank you for your consideration and for your continued service to the residents of the city of New Haven.
Good evening. My purpose here as the acting fire chief tonight is to talk about the hazards of having a large industrial building like this remain unoccupied and deteriorating in our city. What you may not know is UI has documented at least 12 incursions into this building, whether to go in there and get scrap metal, squat, whatever the purpose was. With that said, 12 people, anybody making an entry into this building could potentially have an accident, which would force me to put New Haven firefighters in harm's way to try and rescue them in that building. As the chief of the department, the hazard to my firefighters, to our firefighters, goes up exponentially in a building like this. Now, we've seen with the clock factory, 240 Winthrop, and various other commercial properties throughout the city, you know, eventually your luck runs out. So after a couple decades of being vacant, inevitably something could happen in this building. The hazards for the fire department and for the public come down to this, basically. We have a deteriorating building. This is a very unique building. It's got collapse hazards throughout the entire building. We have structural integrity issues in the sense of we have corroded steel beams, deteriorating concrete, rusted catwalks and stairways that used to be used to monitor the operation there. All of those things could collapse as they weather, as they continue to fall apart, creating more hazards and more issues inside the building. If they should collapse, they can cause compromise. They can compromise the structure in other locations. Failing roof systems. The neat thing about these buildings is they have heavy overhead loads. And what we mean by that is heavy equipment is mounted into the upper parts of the building in the area of these catwalks. They're not being monitored or maintained anymore. So to send New Haven firefighters in there for a rescue, you know, those things could come down on them. There's turbine pits, there's fuel tanks, there's all kinds of things inside these buildings that you're not going to find in your typical building. So again, you know, to send New Haven firefighters into that building is an extreme risk. These buildings should not be left standing for all this time. It is a hazard to
to public safety. It is a hazard to New Haven firefighters. I wouldn't say there's a great chance of fire in this building. It's concrete, it's steel. Most of the combustibles have been taken out over the years, but there are people still trying to get in there for scrap metal. They could be injured, force New Haven firefighters into the building. We have limited entry and exit issues getting in and out of this building. That's a problem. We have large machinery, as I stated before, that's hanging over our heads. But it's also something somebody may get in there and decide, maybe I want to get this metal, maybe I want to, and then they become trapped in it, and that becomes a hazard for us as well. There's high temperature components in there. In other words, the concrete is going to be exposed to heavy, high temperature should there be a fire. It's already deteriorating. We're talking about decades of just neglect, not being addressed at all. Overgrown abandoned areas in the site. We have people accessing, the UI has a documented case of people accessing this building via water, coming up on the side, going up the rocks and enter the building that way. I would caution anybody to keep a building such as this standing this long. No maintenance, nothing going on in there. And it's important that I stand here tonight and I tell you about that hazard to New Haven firefighters and public safety.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your presentation. Thank you.
So moving forward, I will call your name. You will come up, you will give your name and your address, and you have exactly 3 minutes to testify. 3 minutes to testify. So I'll start with the first person, Aaron Pablo Hernandez Katowski. And then after Aaron Katowski, Lee Cruz, please. Please come forward. Aaron.
He's coming right up.
Lee Cruz is next. After Lee Cruz, Mark of Chambers Street. Mark Ferrier. Thank you.
And we'll ask everyone for name and address for the record. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Pablo Hernandez Gutowski, and I am a proud New Haven resident. I reside at 75 C Street. Thank you, Honorable Chair Rodriguez, Honorable Co-Chair Douglas, and the esteemed committee for the opportunity to address this matter. I am here to speak in favor of agenda item LM-2026-0007. The former English Station site on BoA Island remains one of the most significant unresolved environmental liabilities in New Haven. For decades, the abandoned power plant has contained contaminants, including PCBs, heavy metals, and other hazardous materials. These pollutants pose an ongoing risk to the soil and groundwater, as we all know. Because the island sits directly within the Mill River watershed, contamination does not remain isolated. Runoff and erosion create the real potential for toxic substances to leach into the river, ultimately flowing to New Haven Harbor and Long Island Sound. PCBs and heavy metal accumulation in sediment and aquatic life are true threats. Without comprehensive remediation, we risk continued harm to fish, wildlife, water quality, and long-term impacts to the public health of New Haven, as we all know. Cleanup orders have existed for years, yet meaningful remediation has not moved forward at the pace our community deserves. Claiming control of this property gives the city the ability to push forward a real cleanup, ensuring pollutants are contained and removed rather than continuing to threaten Mill River and the harbor ecosystem. United Illuminating's decades-long malfeasance is a declaration of their intentions, which is nothing. This is fundamentally about environmental responsibility, environmental justice, and our commitment to future generations. Mr. Piscatelli touched on how our future generations will look on this space with pride and reverence. We owe it to them to do that. It's time to be brave and decisive. New Haven has waited long enough. United Illuminating thinks we are not worth the effort. What do you guys think? Be brave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the testimony. Lee Cruz.
I have copies of my testimony for the members and up for everybody. And there is scientific and legal backup to what I'm saying, so those are also available to the members. Thank you. Lee Cruz, 29 Clinton Avenue, New Haven. For 25 years, I've worked alongside experts in public health and environmental justice. This includes serving on the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee for Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection and as a founding board member of the Connecticut Environmental Justice Coalition. I'm here to urge the Community Development Committee to vote no, or at least to table the proposal to acquire 510A Grand Avenue. While a new park sounds like a gift, the current plan is fiscally speculative and, more importantly, the unhealthiest choice for our families. I oppose this for 4 reasons. The toxic plume risk, no blank checks. The city's estimate is a guess, but the health cost is certain. Experts in industrial toxicology from our own state, the Department of Public Health, warned that 100,000 square foot English station is saturated with PCBs, with lead, and also with asbestos. If the city's plan involves total demolition to build a park, it will create a massive plume of toxic dust. The wind would carry that dust directly into Fairhaven, and we would be asking, being asked to basically sign a blank check for this project that could trigger a respiratory crisis. The neighborhood is already burdened with the highest asthma rate in the state of Connecticut. Nothing about us without us. This plan was developed, relatively speaking, behind closed doors. The administration hasn't asked, what does this neighborhood really need to be healthy? Instead of a genuine listening tour, we received a sales pitch. If we use eminent domain now, we lock ourselves into a plan that would prioritize a donor's vision over the actual needs of our children. Fixing pools that we already have. The city cannot maintain a pool at John Martinez School just half a mile away. Why would we build another pool on toxic land when our existing neighborhood assets are crumbling? We should not be chasing a new high-risk infrastructure project when we haven't fulfilled the promise to our current public infrastructure. Finally, demolition of English Station is a failure of vision and a health gamble. Across the country, cities have transformed power plants through remediation, cleaning up and sealing sites rather than raising them. Raising it sends PCBs into the air, remediating it keeps the community safe while creating an economic engine. Let's follow the precautionary principle. If an action has risks of causing harm to the public and there's no scientific consensus that it is safe, the burden of proof falls to those taking the action. The city hasn't proven this is safe. In closing, no blank checks for toxic plumes, no projects designing without people who will be breathing it. Yes to fixing our existing pools and cleaning English Station right away. Please reject or table this proposal until a plan is developed in true partnership with the community.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mark Feria? No, Mark Furler. There he is.
After Mr. Furler, we'll have somebody from the youth department come up and testify, please.
Good evening.
Hello.
Name and address for the record, please.
Mark Furlow, 32 Chambers Street.
Thank you.
Thank you for a couple quick points. I want to thank city staff. I was impressed with their program, and I know all those folks worked pretty hard and put a lot of time and effort into that. I will say I went to a number of those conversations that the development team talked about. And for the record, I happen to think that the drive from Worcester Square down Chapel Street into Fairhaven, usually around onto Front, is like the best drive in the city. I think it's a really beautiful transition that incorporates like the old history, a lot of the maritime stuff. There's the colored troops there at Cusco Park. And then, you go back into the residential side. So there's plenty of room for improvement, but I like it a lot. Having said that, I want the committee to vote no. I don't think that, I think that this next team, I'm not sure what to call you guys, I don't mean to, did a really wonderful job of talking about the overall neighborhood and the development program. And I think it's kind of easy to just pull out the English station piece of it. I think it's clearly something a lot of people care about. A lot of concerns around sort of blank checks or what if the laws change, if anything changes down the road, what we're on the hook for. And I think we can do all of those wonderful things and not spend additional money. I don't know any of you in government or any of the folks in our various agencies and bureaucracies who have enough money or who have enough time. And I'm just sort of astonished with everything that's going on with the city right now that this is what we're spending our time on. It's important enough that we came out, but we're not talking about homelessness. And that's not to say that these conversations aren't happening, right? They absolutely are. But this feels very much like a problem in search of a solution to me. Or a solution in search of a problem, rather. Like we're hunting for something, putting a square peg in a round hole. So I think there's a lot of good vision for the neighborhood, but this feels premature. While we're struggling to fix and fund our schools, while we're struggling to fix and fund our parks that already exist in lots of ways, to spend any time and energy on a lot of this stuff feels like a missed opportunity to me. And so I think that your committee is well positioned to be able to say, hey, nope, this is not where we want to go right now. And I would encourage you to do that.
20 seconds.
Thank you so much for your time.
Pretty much all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ronald Huggins. Mr. Ronald Huggins. Dr. Huggins.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Felicia Shishika, 720 Edgewood Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. Good evening, Chair Rodriguez and members of the Community Development Committee. My name is Felicia Shishika, and I'm the Deputy Director of Operations and Recreation for the City of New Haven's Youth and Recreation Department. I've worked in various roles in both Parks and Recreation and Youth and Recreation, including being stationed at the John Martinez School, where I would go by this building twice a day, always wondering if they were ever going to do something with that building or the land. I am here tonight in support of the redevelopment of the English Station property on Grand Avenue. This land has been a vacant site since 1992, and we, the city, can finally do something to use this as programmable space for city residents. Having access to safe, well-maintained parks and recreational spaces is essential for families, children, and seniors. Parks promote physical activity, reduce stress, and create opportunities for neighbors to gather and build stronger, healthier communities. Expanding safe and accessible recreational space directly will include quality of life across the city. Many New Haven neighbors have significantly less park space and fewer recreational resources than others. Transforming this site into a public park and recreational destination would help address those disparities and provide a meaningful opportunity for youth and families who may not otherwise have access to safe outdoor spaces. As reported, funding of up to $10 million has been pledged towards the aquatic and recreational components of this project, demonstrating strong community and regional support for the site's redevelopment. Our residents having access to aquatic recreation is especially important. Swimming is not only a lifelong recreational activity, it's a life-saving skill. Safe public aquatic facilities allow children and adults to learn to swim, build confidence, and remain active. An outdoor pool at this site would significantly expand our department's ability to offer swimming lessons and water safety programs to more residents. Transforming a long blighted industrial property into a safe, welcoming space will restore access to the waterfront, strengthen the surrounding neighborhood, and provide lasting benefits for generations to come. Thank you.
Ron Huggins, 15 City Road, New Haven, Connecticut. My name is Ron Huggins. I serve as the Deputy Director of the Youth and Rec Department for the city. I'm a Black man raising and serving families in the city, and I'm also a taxpayer. I want to speak from experience, not theory. Last year, our department partnered with Goldfish Swim School to pilot a swim access program. Within 24 hours, nearly 500 families signed up. 500. That tells us something. Parents in the city, parents in the city, especially Black and brown parents, understand the risk. Drowning disproportionately impacts children of color. Families are asking for access. Some of those children were as young as 6 months old. The demand is there, the urgency is real. Yes, our city has pools, but too often they are closed for maintenance, staffing shortages, or repairs. That makes sustained swim instruction difficult. Access becomes inconsistent, and when access is inconsistent, equity disappears. As a department, we see firsthand how recreation impacts safety, confidence, health, and opportunity. Swimming is not a luxury, it is a life-saving skill. I understand the concerns raised about cost, remediation, and long-term planning. Those questions deserve transparency and responsible fiscal oversight. But I also believe we cannot allow fear of complexity to stall progress for our children. For generations, Black and brown families have had limited access to safe, quality aquatic facilities. Other cities invest boldly in public spaces that signal value and dignity. Our children deserve the same. If the city has the opportunity to acquire this land and expand it into a park space that includes a reliable, modern public swim facility, I support moving forward through whatever lawful mechanism is necessary, while ensuring accountability and community engagement along the way. As a public servant, a resident, and a man of color, I believe access to swimming is about safety, equity, and opportunity. Our kids deserve access. Our families have already told us they want it. Let's not ignore that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Inez Myers. Inez Myers, yep, Inez Albert Eden. Eden. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
My name is Inez Myers. I live at 309 Dixwell Avenue, and I'm here for the Silver Seniors Swimming. I am so grateful and thankful that they opened it up again. I grew up in Fairhaven, Mill River neighborhood, 1954. Okay, my parents bought a house. But I am so happy that LEAP opened it up for seniors. I'm a little lame, but I still get around. And going back to LEAP to swim was the best thing that could happen to me this year. It strengthened me. It helped me to want to do more things for myself. So for the neighborhood and for seniors, our silver seniors. Please think about us, opening up a lot of things for us, for the swimming. And for Mill River, I've seen a lot of changes, and I hope that you open that up for the neighborhood for better. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Albert, he was here. Albert Eden. He left. Oh, there he is. Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record.
Yes, Albert Eden, 7 R Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Good evening.
Good evening.
Just real quick, I just want to thank Chair Rodriguez, Vice Chair Douglas, and committee members for the opportunity to speak. My name is Albert Eden. I live at 7 R Street in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm the aquatics manager at LEAP. I began at LEAP in the 1990s as a senior counselor at the old Elm Haven in the Dixwell neighborhood while I was a student at the University of New Haven. Today, I have the privilege of leading our aquatic programs, the heart of what we do at LEAP. Since 2025, June specifically, we've taught more than 1,000 children to take swim lessons. We've also partnered with the YMCA, PAL, New Haven Public Schools, and just the city overall. Our classes are running at the Leeds Pool on Jefferson Street and Martinez School in Fairhaven. And soon we'll be bringing swimming to Career High School. We train and employ dozens of local young people as lifeguards and swim instructors. All right, so for more than 30 years, the former English Station power plant has stood as a symbol of pollution and neglect in New Haven. Fenced off, contaminated, and disconnected from the surrounding community, the site has been unusable for generations. Transforming it into Mill River Park with green space, trail, athletic facilities, and a public outdoor pool is about more than a park. It's about environmental justice, public health, and equity. Water surrounds us in New Haven, yet swimming, the life-saving skill that keeps people safe, isn't equally accessible. Nationally, 70% of African-American children and 60% of Latino children do not know how to swim. We see this every day, and we know limited access disproportionately affects low-income communities of color. A public outdoor pool at Mill River Park would expand access in a meaningful way. It would reduce costs and transportation barriers, giving more children a safe place to learn to swim. It would provide healthy recreation for families and seniors, create youth jobs, and offer fun on hot summer days. Every year we delay, we keep a blight in our city and remain without an outdoor pool, something quite uncommon for a city of New Haven's size. This project is about reclaiming 9 acres of currently unusable riverfront land for the public good, replacing contamination with community, fences with opportunity, and neglect with investment. Let's clean up the past and build something life-saving for our future. Just want to thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Corbin Mason. After Corbin, Robert Narese. Narese? Name and address for the.
Hi, my name is Corbin Mason. I live at 6 Millers Mew, New Haven, Connecticut. I've worked in aquatics for the past 5 years, and for the last 2, I've served as a head lifeguard for LEAP. About 1.5 years ago, I earned my lifeguard instructor certification and have since been responsible for training and certifying lifeguards for LEAP. Over the past year, I've also had the privilege of coordinating and teaching swim lessons, serving more than 1,000 youth in New Haven. Today, I would like to share a story about a 4-year-old girl named Lola. When she first entered the program, she was extremely fearful of the water. Over the course of several months, we worked with her on safety and competency in the water, including treading water, floating, freestyle swimming, and more. And she developed the skills and confidence necessary to stay safe in and around the water. Shortly after the break in between our components, her grandmother shared with me that while she was visiting a relative's home with a backyard pool, Lola accidentally slipped and fell into the water. Because of the instruction and practice she had received, She was able to independently get herself to safety before an adult could assist. Behind every statistic, there is a girl like Lola who needs a chance to swim but does not have the resources, and this moment reinforced in me how critical access to quality aquatics resources at a young age truly is, and why ensuring these life-saving resources are available to every child in our community and must remain a priority.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Robert?
Yes,
Is it Robert?
Narachi.
Narachi.
Thank you, Mr. Narachi.
Thank you.
Narachi.
Thank you for your time. I live at 678 Orange Street, New Haven. And I'm an architect and I'm a former swimmer. I'm not here to support this project in its current form. Although I find it admirable, the speakers spoke about swimming and the inequity in swimming instruction. I also am sympathetic to Mr. Cruz's point about keeping up the infrastructure we have before we build another pool in the city. Personally, I think that we have the most quantity of parkland per capita probably of any city in the US already. If we were to build a park, a pool may not even be appropriate here. I think it would probably be more appropriate down at Lighthouse Park where there's lifeguard infrastructure, parking, etc. But what I really came here to talk about was architecture and cultural assets. There have been many adaptive reuse projects done all across the world, notably Bankside Power Station, Battersea Power Station in London, converted it to an art museum and a mixed-use project. It can be done, they can be cleaned up, they can be made habitable. I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that there is a consent order with UI that they don't have a choice. They have to legally clean up that site, and to some certain degree, and we should demand that of them. But I think as the alders, you guys also need to make a decision about our vision of what that community asset will be. And, like the saying goes, if you forget your past, you kind of don't know what your future is going to be because you sort of lost sight of your history. And that station is one of the last vestiges of industrialized New Haven. And it's a magnificent, fantastic structure. And by fantastic, I mean huge and incredible, and it has a lot of potential to be a public asset. So I don't think that we should discount that. And Alder Rodriguez, you mentioned, you actually asked if you're just voting on the possibility of eminent domain. I don't think that's really the case, because I think if you allow staff to go after, they're going to have a discussion about the value of the site.
30 seconds. And
that will be, point of order, much more time was given to staff. If I could have that extra minute, I'd appreciate it. When the city staff has a discussion about the value of the site, that will include whether or not the building is demolished. So if the Board of Alders does not give directive, if you allow eminent domain, that you intend or want to keep, desire to keep that building, it won't be kept. So I think you kind of have to, make a value judgment about whether or not you feel that this is a cultural asset and it should be kept. I kind of think it should be. It's a monumental structure, and interventions have saved other towns. It happened in North Adams, Massachusetts, Massmoka. It happened in London, and it could happen here too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Magdalene Garcia. Magdalene Garcia. And after Magdalene, Casey Pickett. And then Anna Pickett. Welcome.
Good evening.
How are you?
Name and address for the record, and Alderman Chanel, I'm going to have you speak on.
Sure. My name is Magdalena Garcia. I live at 216 Yale Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about the project that represents a meaningful investment in our city's future, the acquisition of the English Street property for the development of a new community pool and park in New Haven. This is more than a land purchase. It's an opportunity to transform an underutilized industrial site into a vibrant, healthy, and inclusive space to our residents. Across the country, communities are reimagining former utility properties as public assets. Similar transformations in other cities in the U.S. have sparked neighborhood revitalization, increased property values, and created gathering spaces that bring families together. We have a chance to do the same here. But in New Haven, this project carries even greater importance. It's a coastal city. We live on the water. Swimming is not a luxury, it's a safety issue. Every child growing up in waterfront communities should know how to swim. Access to affordable swim lessons and safe place to practice is not simply recreation, it's a prevention. It can save lives. I would also like to share something personal. I grew up in Poland, where enjoying a public pool did not require a special private membership. Community pools were affordable and accessible to everyone. They were places where families of all backgrounds gathered and where children learned essential life skills. That experience shaped my belief that recreation, and especially swimming, should never be reserved only for those who can afford private access. From an economic standpoint, converting this property into a public amenity will stimulate surrounding development and signal that we are a city investing in quality of life. From a public safety and public health perspective, it promotes active lifestyles while equipping our residents, especially all children, with critical water safety skills. I respectfully ask the committee to approve the acquisition of this property so we can move forward with planning and development. Let's transform this site into something that reflects the best who we are, a waterfront city that prioritizes safety, inclusion, and community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you.
Casey? Yep, Casey Enna. Pickett also.
Thank you so much. My name is Casey Pickett. I live at 144 Foster Street in New Haven. I speak tonight in support of the proposal that the city has put forward, and I speak as a convert to this project. I will admit to, since I moved here in 2008, having looked at English Station as an incredible opportunity, I imagine that lots of people in the city do, and see in it lots of different opportunities. For myself, I saw opportunities for clean energy development, and with that kind of access, that this could be a really amazing industrial site as we transform our economy. I also saw, sort of demographic movement myself, but like a brew pub with a climbing wall up the tower, so many cool things. A museum, I want to be on that site, I want to be in that building. It just looks amazing. But I've never gotten to be on that building. And other than the 12 people that UI has caught, no one has. And my worry is that the status quo, I think the status quo is our enemy here, and the lack of control, and the lack of influence that the city residents through the city government has on this project. If we leave this project in the hands of UI and the state, I worry that the status quo will continue. And as amazing as it would be to have the things that we dream for with that building, it seems from the testimony we've heard that that's exceedingly unlikely, given the environmental state of the building and given the other challenges that, that exist with the site. And my worry is that we'll be here 20, 30 years from now, and my kids who are here tonight will be dealing with the same thing that we're dealing with, and it will remain just a dream with paralyzing status quo as the existing situation. My hope, though, is that you could enable the city to step in and act through the acquisition of the site, and through that action, get our residents a seat at the table with the state and with UI to make an impact and influence this to be something useful for us, right? I find the vision that the city has put out there, not the first thing I thought of, a pool, but it's really cool. It would be incredible if we could spend time on that out in the harbor like that. I mean, anyway, it excites the imagination, right? And that ability to put a gem like that in the middle of our city could attract significant housing development and really change the character of the center of our city in a way that could attract more tax dollars. It could fund some of the, could, for example, fund more investment in our parks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anna?
Good evening.
Name and address.
Hi, my name is Anna Pickett. I live at 144 Foster Street, New Haven. I'm a mother of two and a resident of the city for nearly 2 decades. I serve on the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Committee and for the state. And I'm here tonight to speak in strong support of the proposed park, Mill River Park, by transforming Ball Island into a public park. We aren't just cleaning up a brownfield. We are reclaiming our shoreline and creating a healthy place to swim outside in one of our city's hottest neighborhoods. I mean, temperature-wise, it's debatable whether or not culturally it's the hottest, but it's definitely one of the hottest temperature-wise. Heat is one of the #1 killers, weather-related killers, and it exceeds the mortality rates of hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods combined globally. Specifically, the Fairhaven community is currently underserved when it comes to the deep tree cover and natural areas. This park would provide a critical green lung to the community and offer shade and physical and mental health benefits, which really excite me. I think it's really important to acknowledge the painful history of the mid-20th century where public pools were closed across the country following desegregation. And by creating a safe and natural swimming area here, we can begin to correct that history and ensure that outdoor recreation is a right and not just a luxury. I encourage you to turn this site of pollution into a site of possibility, and I urge you to support the proposed next steps toward the procurement and development of all islands. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Harold Shapiro, looks like Harold Shapiro? I got it. Aaron Kotowski is next after that. Huh? Oh, he already said.
Name and address for the record, please.
Harold Shapiro, 17 Carriage Hill Drive, Guilford, Connecticut. I know I speak as an outside person, but I actually spent a lot of time inside English Station when it was an active plant. I am a freelance photographer. I did work for United Illuminating from 1989 till the early 2000s. And from that time, I saw English Station as a beautiful asset for a future arts organization, an arts museum, science, discovery, maybe even athletics, a big range of things. And we've seen the Tate Modern in London, an amazing adaptation of a power plant. There are plants that have been changed in Brooklyn, in Oregon, Chicago, Philadelphia, Turkey, Rome, and all around the country. So I'm just urging a new view of this incredible building and site that could be an arts organization or historical museum. The right donors could help enormously. So, reaching out to the right people, I think could be amazing. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
The photographs over there are photographs that I took in the early 1990s.
Thank you.
The black and white ones.
Sebastian Ward.
Thank you.
Sebastian Ward and then Kobe Smith.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Sebastian Ward.
295 St. John Street. And I'm here to speak in favor of the initiative in question tonight. I'm a lifelong resident of New Haven, specifically in Ward 8. I'm a graduate of New Haven Academy, and I'm now a senior at Yale University. And I stand here today as both a product of this community and as someone who feels a deep responsibility to help shape it for the better. And that's why I'm here, to strongly advocate for the City of New Haven's plan to construct a park on BoA Island. I truly believe this project will have an extraordinary impact on our city. I can say with confidence that I would not be where I am today without the opportunities that this city has invested in me growing up. Public programs and local nonprofits that collaborated with the city have supported me academically, fostered a love for athletics, and shaped my worldview. New Haven already has many crucial assets that positively impact the young people here, and we ought to view this as a signal to create more. At a very young age, my parents signed me up for swimming classes at LEAP, recognizing it as a life skill. And after hearing the touching story about Lola, I understand why. After significant instruction and practice, I mastered the skill. Those experiences mattered. They built confidence, discipline, and life skills that I still carry with me today. That's why I feel so strongly about building a park on BoA Island, and that this would expand this foundation of services, helping produce more well-rounded young people with access to the same opportunities that shaped me. Growing up in Ward 8, English Station has always been a blight on our community, a massive eyesore that physically separated my neighborhood from the one right next to it. As I got older, I came to understand the deeper environmental harm it represented. It disturbed me to know that a contaminated industrial site filled with lead and other hazardous chemicals was sitting just blocks away from where I lived. At a time when climate catastrophe is accelerating around the world, it is critical that local governments act where they can. From that perspective, this initiative should be a no-brainer. We have the chance to remediate serious environmental dangers that disproportionately affect minority communities, while at the same time creating a vital public resource in those very same neighborhoods. Something as simple and as powerful as access to a quality public pool is already taken for granted in surrounding towns. Our residents deserve that too. We should see this project as an opportunity to reshape New Haven's social fabric, to make it more cohesive, more community-centered. Because if we want to truly support one another, we have to break down the barriers that divide us and replace them with shared spaces, common ground, places where people can come together and enjoy the city as one community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Kobe Smith. Kobe Smith. Third time, Kobe Smith. Michael Berindi. Michael Berindi, and then it's like Renee Hughes. Renee Hughes.
Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Michael Morendi, and I live at 630 Chapel Street. So I have concerns with any order that would constrain the property to be used solely for park purposes, restricting any uses that could feasibly occupy the historic plant building and thereby dooming it to demolition. Before I moved to New Haven, the first time I ever visited the city was not for pizza, but to lay eyes on English Station. I was intrigued by its architecture, and I couldn't understand how or why an industrial facility would be constructed with so much character and style. This curiosity later evolved into a years-long project documenting the history and architecture of hundreds of power plants across the country. I can attest to the craftsmanship and monumentality present in these structures, but English Station is truly unique as it reflects the civic architecture of New Haven itself. The designers drew from local churches, Yale's collegiate Gothic buildings, and City Hall in order to establish the power company as an equal to these long-standing and respected institutions. The castle-like appearance is not merely a hollow facade, however. English Station is a fortress of power, with substantial walls designed to withstand the weight and vibration of the massive machinery once operating within. Compare this to any of the apartment buildings built here in the last year or two. Walk by 269 Orange Street right now, and you'll see a thin veneer of fake bricks falling off the building. At 848 Chapel Street, you can see literal styrofoam as the facade peels away. Ironically, the false facade is designed to look like rusted steel beams. We have luxury apartment buildings trying to masquerade as old industrial structures. And why is that? It's because all around the country, many cities have found great success in redeveloping industrial buildings into vibrant hubs of art and culture. And this association has permeated the wider subconscious to the point where developers are trying to emulate it on new builds. New Haven is a city with a genuine industrial heritage. Do we want to carry a styrofoam emulation of that into the future, or do we want to have some examples of our real history left behind? The architecture and materials of English Station are an asset that, once destroyed, can never be replicated. Now, for those who think the preservation of English Station is a pipe dream, there are countless examples of successful power plant redevelopments from across the country that prove otherwise. They're comparable to English in age, scale, and the remediation that was required. Notably, many were accomplished in cities with economies smaller than that of New Haven, such as Savannah, Georgia, and Lansing, Michigan. One example in Sacramento had even been abandoned for 67 years before its redevelopment, a testament to the longevity of these structures. Many of these projects also included residential units and opened up large sections of the waterfront for recreation at no cost to taxpayers. A more detailed summary of relevant developments can be found in my written testimony. If such a wide array of communities across the country have been able to come up with creative solutions for repurposing power plants, I don't think we should be closing the door on any possibilities for English Station just yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We got, looks like Renee Huge. Renee Huge. No. Renee Huge. Anna Juarez. After Anna is Matt Nieves. Mackay Nieves.
Name and address for the record?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and members of the board. My name is Ana Paola Juarez. I reside at 59 Atwater Street. That's actually in Fairhaven. I respectfully ask the board members of this committee in rejecting the city's proposal for its current trajectory in obtaining this land and development plan for it. It is alarming the amount of liability protections the city is preparing for, and the amount of unknowns that remain after acquiring this land. That's financial and environmental risk that the city seems very eager to inherit and willing to pass on generationally, because I noticed they like to use that word a lot today. Some additional points to consider are toxic risks that are often placed in low-income neighborhoods, minority communities, and areas with existing environmental burdens. I understand that tonight's discussion is not what the city's intention to do with the land, which I do want to remind everyone here, which is destroying a historical structure and replacing it with an outdoor pool on toxic land.
If you can.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
That
was actually my last one.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Kimberly Acosta. I'm sorry.
Welcome. Name and address for the record?
Kimberly Acosta, 255 Lloyd Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Good evening, or good night at this point, I guess, everyone. I'm here today as a lifelong resident of New Haven and longtime resident of Fairhaven to testify against the acquisition of English Station / BoA Island for the purpose of creating a public pool and park. One of the main reasons I disagree with this project is because it is in no way reflective of community visions and needs for this site. At the first official public meeting in October 2025, I consider it the first because I believe it was the first meeting where the city notified residents via text, phone, and email. The city had already decided that the site would be a park and public pool, regardless of how many residents disagreed with it and or the reasons for their disagreement. We should prioritize community development by and for the longtime and lifelong residents of New Haven, communities who have demonstrated immense resilience in remaining here throughout decades of disinvestment and inequity. Throughout our history and presently, most of New Haven's major development projects prioritizes drawing in visitors and newcomers. We can do both, but we must be careful to not repeat history and destroy and displace our communities just for the purpose of revitalization. Furthermore, the amount of money necessary for both the proper remediation and development of the site is uncertain, and in my opinion, unjustifiable and disrespectful when the city has failed to maintain, improve, and increase access to our existing parks and public pools for all residents. I can't imagine a better way to support equity and access to swimming and parks especially for Black and brown children and communities who this is supposedly for, than to revitalize our existing spaces across New Haven. The 10 million pledged can be used to strengthen what exists, not create something new and can't sustain what we have. We should remediate the property for equity and justice reasons, but our children and communities deserve better than to be used as a token or bargaining chip to justify uses for the site that do not serve our core needs. As someone who grew up walking past English Station daily, living only 10 minutes away, and yes, breathing in that toxic air during, before, and after the demolition, you know what hasn't been mentioned so far is how the community currently uses the space. If anyone who drives by there, walks by there, sees the day, a sunny day, you'll see that there are people there fishing in the water. No one's ever mentioned fixing the water, remediating that. It has much larger health and environmental justice impacts, which has been referenced a lot by previous testifiers. So regardless, the city could have asked you today to acquire the property purely to remediate it, and they didn't. It could have left the door wide open for alternative community uses, but they relentlessly pursued this park and pool idea. And so I do not trust them to honor community input and alternative uses after the land has been acquired. So if you approve this request to acquire the property, I ask you to please, as elected officials, use your power to require the remediation and strongly encourage the city to do better in ensuring that its development actually meets our needs first and foremost, strengthening what already exists before developing something new. That is what would be just and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you. I skipped over somebody. Nieves, like Makai Nieves. Kai Nieves. Ian Christian. Ian Christian. Christmas.
Christmas.
What is it?
Christmas.
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 Oh, Christmas.
Name and address for the record, please.
Ian Chrisman, 475 Quinnipiac Avenue in New Haven. I'm here in support of the city acquiring Ball Island and turning it into a public space. I think an outdoor pool would be a great option. I grew up in Montpelier, Vermont, and had a public outdoor pool. It was a place I learned to swim and was taught valuable life-saving skills. Skills that gave me the confidence to help save a drowning woman struggling out in the Quinnipiac River a few years ago that was out of reach of rescue services. That pool was also a place that I could bike to and hang out with my friends on the dog days of summer with concessions and food trucks, and I want a place like that in New Haven for my children. We currently have a golf course and a skating rink that are both only seasonally available and require an admission from which New Haven residents get a discount. And I could see a pool here operating in a similar model. Fairhaven is an island surrounded by water and train tracks, and having a repurposed island within the island for the kids and community would be awesome. I personally don't think the city planners are pushing far enough. I would like not only a pool, but to see room for a future water slide or Ferris wheel or iconic sky view tower, similar to great destinations in significant cities around the world. Perhaps someday, if it started as a pool, it could grow into a bigger water park or recreational destination. It seems like anything here is going to require monumental effort, and having a large summer spot, recreational destination would be pretty awesome use of this island. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Fakita. Joe Fakita. And then Rafael Fuentes.
Good evening. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Joe Facetta, 27 Adeline Street. The park and outdoor swimming pool plan for Ball Island is actually very well designed and would be perfectly appropriate in super wealthy Beverly Hills, California, not financially distressed New Haven. The mayor's plan is the worst idea to appear since the New Haven city government built the Coliseum in the 70s, and we all know what a multi-level failure that was. Haven't we learned anything from that catastrophe? The mayor's plan is riddled with problems and flaws with its reasoning and logic, which is instantly recognizable or apparent to the average New Haven resident, but curiously, not to him. His plan instantly generates harsh criticism, rejection, revulsion, sarcasm, and even anger. Whereas my idea, which you are all familiar with, is about transforming the building into a museum of contemporary art, culture, and the history of electric power generation. The plan creates instant approval, surprise, delight, and excitement because the potential is obvious to anyone who is told of it, except the mayor. It also preserves a very important, iconic, magnificent, and historic building in an amazingly unique location. Everyone I've spoken to loves and wants the English station repurposed into an economic and cultural entity to benefit the city, region, and state. Repurposing the English station is a once in 1,000 years opportunity for New Haven, separate from Yale, to achieve something truly great rather than just being known for pizza. This can be accomplished without burdening the city with debt and endless maintenance costs that will continue forever, as the mayor's plan for Ball Island will do. This is an opportunity for New Haven to join the growing number of cities that have approved of cultural economic projects with amazing results. Places such as North Adams, Mass. With Mass MoCA, the Tate Modern in London, the Museum d'Orsay in Paris, the Dynamo House in Providence, and Powerhouse Arts in Brooklyn. I visited yesterday, February 16th. Incredible building. The English station transformation will cost New Haven nothing, pay taxes, hire residents, bring people together with events and activities, create tremendous cultural harmony through sharing, bring greater understanding of each other's differences, and generate economic growth. But the mayor doesn't seem to understand that. As I've already said, this is a rare opportunity for New Haven to achieve something truly awe-inspiring that we can all be proud of and enjoy forever. So let's not squander this chance. However, this process cannot begin without the Board of Alders' support. It's up to you to stop the mayor's ridiculous plan. Thank you. I really enjoyed that.
Sorry, I'm sorry, gentlemen. Jason Bartlett. I didn't skip over on purpose, Jason. Overlook. You're up. Thank you. Sorry
So
about
I
that.
also would like to acknowledge Alder Adam Rashan, who's joined us as well. Thank you.
Name and address.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Chair and Honorable Alders. My name is Jason Bartlett. I'm at 38 Howard Avenue. Madam Chair, before the recess, you said this was really about acquiring a property, a contaminated property. And the big question is, for what and at what risk? Let me do the risk first. First, with all due respect to the administration that gave their presentation, I don't think that we can really say that we know for certain there is no risk to the city. We never know in any development project what the risk is. This case is there's a major lawsuit. It's gone on and on and on. And only DEP can say at what level this will be cleaned up. And we know for a fact, even from the presentation that was made, that they only have to do to the commercial. And if you want to do to the park, then we will inherit risk, financial risk. For what? Well, it's been sold as equity for Black and brown children. And if we really want to keep our kids to learn how to swim and keep them alive, we can start that now. We can start the equity process now. As been mentioned, the money just to acquire this, we could have many more pools in our city if it's $1 million pool, or even more than that. We can fix our pools and we can have more of them. We can put in curriculum where 3rd and 4th graders are mandated to learn how to swim. We can use the youth department, and like Lee was here earlier, we should be paying for all that. If that's really our priority, then we should make that our priority now. And we don't have to spend millions of dollars to do it. So I would ask that you not bind the hands of what can happen at this piece of property. I would ask that you either park this or that you vote no. And leave, not foreclose on the opportunities of what else we could do at this site. I'm all for economic justice and I'm all for economic development. But we can do clean energy infrastructure here. We can do creative adaptive uses. People have talked about Brooklyn and other places. We are not following those models with this property. We could even partner with UI, get at the table with UI by partnering with them and bring a private energy developer to build a clean energy hub on this property and on this site. You could do battery storage, solar, you could do a microgrid. And the energy that's produced from only a part of this property could go back to the schools, the clinics, the community centers, and even rebates for the residents within the community. That example has been done in Brooklyn and other places, and it's an opportunity for us. So the for what is really important. I did give testimony in terms of writing that is much more expansive. But I think I'm going to stop there and just ask you to, really look at the options and really look at the risk before we jump and foreclose other opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Rafael Fuentes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Name and address for the
The rest of Barnard after that.
Rafael Fuentes, 75 Poplar Street. I'm here to have you guys either vote no or table it. And the reason is, like what Jason said, the reason for it. I don't have as a longtime resident, 54 years in New Haven, it's not the acquisition, it's the reason to acquire it for a park. We've gotten $500,000 for East Shore Park, $500,000 for Pete Meadows for fixing them. Those parks aren't fixed. I think for it to be a park is not the right idea. We should do something else, renewed energy. There's many other things that could be done with that site if it's purchased. But we don't have a good idea, and I don't think that justifies why we should do eminent domain or do what they want to do is another thing with the Land Acquisition Authority or something to that effect. I think we need to look into a better idea before we do that. We need to work on our parks. We need the green trees and everything that somebody mentioned, but they cut down 11 trees in Carmine Perscola Park. So did you cut the trees down because we need that? To justify it? I don't know. The trees didn't look dead. I have the video and all the pictures of the trees. But we need to fix what we have. From that park, we have John S. Martinez has a pool. Only PAL uses it. But to every other resident, it's under repair. In Conti School, the pool is closed. Wilbur Cross. If you know the history of New Haven and you grew up in New Haven, we had pools. We had to pass a class. If not, you're not going to graduate. So we need to understand, as a city, we need to understand the history of our city, of how everything was. We need to fix our schools. We need to fix our pools. We have splash pads in Fairhaven. We have Jocelyn Park. We have one on Front Street, 2 of them actually on Front Street. We have that. And now we're gonna go build a whole pickle park and splash pad on Longworth, that the money's already there. It's in the bank, supposedly,
Why don't we take the old Southern Connecticut building and build an indoor pool there? If they really want a pool, it's middle point to everything, easy access, highway on and off. And guess what? You use it 12 months a year versus a park that's gonna be a burden on the city. We don't know what brings it from industrial to playgrounds and parks. So for argument's sakes, if you have 1,000 square feet and it's to render it industrial, it's $1,000. I'm just gonna say 1,000 and 1,000. What is the number to bring it to playgrounds and parks? Very simple. That's your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
The rest stuff, that card. Right?
My name is Bekra, and I live in 776 Quinnipiac Avenue. My name being on that list was my mistake of thinking that I was just putting my name because I came to the meeting. But I'm glad that I did, because I heard a lot of good ideas here from a lot of my colleagues. I'm an architect, urban design and developer. And I love beautiful buildings, significant architecture, location, but it matters to the community, it matters to the whole city. And English Station is one of those. I can't tell you anymore, I don't have anything prepared, but everything I heard tonight made me realize again, people are awake and looking at opportunities beyond the simple fix it. Thank you. Thank you.
Estes Farwell.
Name and address for the record.
Yes, Anstress Farwell, 59 Elm Street. I've heard a lot of new things tonight too. And as I think many of you know, we've been working with the Fairhaven community for quite a few months now, and with the city of New Haven until recently, on looking at ways to reuse English Station and Wall Island that would have a mixture of uses in them. And we have consulted with the community, done many walking tours, had a workshop with the architects and engineers that we're working with, Grimshaw Architects and Sherwood Design Engineers. They are, the engineers are experts in the remediation of highly polluted urban waterways. And there's a display over there, and the images in your the testimony I submitted that shows some of the ideation of what we've heard from the community that they'd like to see on this site. And one of the interesting things, even with all of this time that we have spent talking with residents and businesses and community organizations, no one has ever said that they want a pool. It's never come up. But I can say this, that if after all of this discussion and people thinking about this now more, if people wanted a pool on the site, it doesn't mean that you need to demolish the building. There's space on the land, particularly in front. You could put a pool in the turbine hall. There's photos, the black and whites, that show that huge space. Then you'd have a pool that would be available 12 months a year instead of 3. You could also have an outdoor pool up on the west roof that would be spectacular, you know, with views of the city. So in a way, what this illustrates is that this conversation has been too tight, too small, and too fast. That if you really want to make sure that you can get a both-and solution and look at every opportunity, even about pools, as some people have said, you could build a lot of pools around town with just a fraction of the money that would go into the cost of this. So, for instance, a really fair analysis to every neighborhood in the city would be to look at what are the neighborhoods that have the fewest assets in terms of open land and recreational opportunities. You'd start with them. And so we know that it's Hill North, West River, and Dwight have the fewest amount of land for public parks and recreational facilities. And for West River and Hill North, there is the beautiful West River Park, but you have to cross the most dangerous street in the city to get there. And so is there land in these areas that is already owned by the city that could be used for something like an outdoor or an indoor pool? I'd say Route 34 West. I'm throwing that out as an idea to show that even this concept needs to be drilled down deeper. What's the ideal location? The other location is a floating pool in the water. Yeah. So you have written testimony. Please table this. You need more time, and I think that the whole community needs more time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie
Plateau?
Leslie Plateau. Oh, Leslie.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Leslie Plateau, 410 Greenwich Avenue in New Haven. I have been a Hill resident since 2005, and I want to agree with a lot of the sentiments that were spoken tonight about the need for public pools for children to learn to swim. My daughter, right before the COVID shutdown, took swim lessons when she was 4 at John Martinez School. That is a beautiful pool. I also want to acknowledge that your decision tonight is about acquiring property, but we got to be real. The plan is out of the door, and we need to make sure that the issues are addressed. So I'm urging this committee to vote no or table these plans. And here's why. Environmental justice and public health have been discussed today. And the city does have an obligation to ensure residents have safe and healthy, equitable experiences and environments to live, work, and play. We're not there, folks. We're not there. We have schools with sewage leaks, seeping into classrooms and offices. Temperatures in our schools this winter have been at 50 degrees on multiple sites. We have leaks, we have broken pipes, we have moldy classrooms. That's public health. That's environmental justice. This is a fantasy, and you can see I'm getting emotional because I'm having a really hard time understanding how we got here. Based off, not to mention the cross pool is an active hazard right now, and it's currently inaccessible. Currently, we spend $1.70 per square foot on maintenance for our schools. And we have been told that we should be spending between $3.50 and $4.50 per square foot for it to be considered an effective investment. We don't even have the money to handle what currently is dilapidated. For 18,000 kids and thousands of workers, that is not safe. That is not public health. We are not on the right track. I've lived in the Hill on Greenwich Ave for 20 years. At the start of almost every summer, we have to call the city and get Galvin Park up and running. Every year. We're talking safe and well-maintained parks. Let's talk about safe and well-maintained parks. We're not there. And this fantasy is not going to get us there. Not to mention there's frequent disputes between the city and the Board of Ed on who's going to take care of the playgrounds on schools. So we have broken playgrounds for kids currently, and the city and the Board of Ed's fighting over whose property it is. I'm sorry, I just don't see a path forward here. And I say this with deep love for this city. I don't say this to disrespect my city. I love this place. I've been a teacher here for a long time. I believe great things are possible, but I'm not sure this is the great thing that is possible for us. 25 years ago, we built schools, spent $1 billion, city and state money to build schools. And there was not a priority to make sure that we had the resources and the staffing to keep those schools in top-notch shape. And we failed there, because look at us now. They're leaking, they're crumbling. So in 25 years, how's the park on Ball Island gonna look? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Meteresco. Paul Meteresco.
Jacob.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My handwriting, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Name and address for the record?
Michael Harris after him.
Oh, Paul Lejanko, 64 Front Street, Fairhaven, New Haven. I've lived in Fairhaven for several years. I've moved up here from Stamford. What you're here to consider tonight is not a swimming pool, it's not a park, it's the acquisition of this land. And you should look at it as an acquisition being an asset, not a liability. If the city acquires this, it will become a liability because it's gonna take money away that the city doesn't have now to maintain its current parks and schools. I don't know how many of you have been to Lighthouse Point. When I moved up here, I moved from Stanford, we had 3 beautiful beaches. I went to Lighthouse Point, I couldn't even sit in the sand because they don't keep the sand clean. And there's no showers, there's hardly any, I think there's an outdoor bathroom that you have to use. The place is falling apart. There's no lighting at night. The parking lots have potholes. It's like you just can't, if you can't swim there, you can't enjoy the place. So why are we putting all this money into acquiring Bell Island, putting maybe $100 million to develop it, when our beach where you can go and swim and enjoy it, you can't do that right now. And how many other parks in the city aren't up to snuff? And how many city schools have pools that aren't being used? And you even look beyond the city schools, that other pools that the residents could use, like Albertus Magnus has a pool that they open to the community certain days of the week. And Yale University has a pool that I think you can join for a very reasonable price. And they have 2 pools indoor. And that's the other issue, is that this is an outdoor pool. When I lived in Stanford, I used my neighbor's pool. She spent $12,000 a year to maintain it and heat it. So, and it was a small pool. So how much is it gonna cost to maintain this huge pool? And you only get to use it 4 months out of the year. If you have indoor pools at schools, you could use 12 months out of the year. Yeah, you could have summer programs, winter programs, spring programs, any program. But this is just 4 months out of the year. So you're limiting the use of it. And like I said before, this is gonna be a liability. You're voting on this now. So it's gonna be a liability that you're voting for, not an asset. So please carefully consider what you're voting on and make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Michael Harris. And after Michael, Miguel Pittman, Senior.
Hello and good evening. My name is Michael Harris. I live at 100 York Street in New Haven. I'm the Executive Director of the South Central Connecticut Regional Economic Development Corporation. And we are an EDA designated economic development district, which means that we support the work of economic development through the comprehensive strategic plan that we do for the 15 towns of the region. In that role, I have certifications as a certified economic developer from IEDC, and I'm a certified economic development finance professional from Grow America. At Rex Development, the shorthand for our organization, we run brownfield programs, including site assessment funds and a revolving loan fund, currently has several $1 million out in projects throughout the region. What we do is we provide independent assessments of project proposals. And having been asked to look at this item before you tonight, I would say that my professional recommendation quite strongly is that you approve this action to approve the city to pursue acquisition of Ball Island and give them the power in that negotiation to have eminent domain as an option. Part of that is when we begin these assessments, we look at the current conditions of the site. Currently, the site is partially exposed to wind and rain with known PCB contamination throughout the site. Anecdotally, last time I kayaked down that river, I counted 35 people fishing on the bridges in Fairhaven in water that is washing against rusted exposed bulwarks and the dirt of this site. The current owner is not taking steps to do remediation pending action, and the decision for whether or not that remediation done by UI will be at one level or another. Ultimately, the decision about whether or not the building stays up or comes down is likely to be decided by lawyers based upon engineers' reports of how extensively the industrial poison has seeped into the bones of the building. Right now, the city of New Haven does not have a seat at that table to help that decision. The current owner is likely to receive, if they are successful, probably about 6 inches to 1.5 feet of cap, possibly paved on top of the current site. This is going to be a parking lot, essentially, when they get it from UI. The eligible uses for high industrial include, as of right, salvage, storage, auto yards. Importantly, the current owners aren't the ones putting money into this building. They just need to find something to do with it. And given the political football, there's little likelihood of special permits or exceptions. And so the decision that you have before you is deciding on the capacity of who's going to take responsibility for this site. The city of New Haven has an extensive team that has dealt with brownfields and remediated them across the city. The current owners, as far as we can tell from press coverage, are less than responsive and have a difficult and opaque ownership structure. For anyone's dreams to happen that has been described tonight, it's going to require tens of millions of dollars and major benefactors. In order to move any of those forward, I urge you to consider site control and possibly build on successful models like the Q House Committee or the Goff Street Armory Committee. If you believe there should be more public input, if you believe there should be a different use on this site, getting the public control and providing community voices through some type of governance committee is a way to move that forward. Because continuing to leave this in its current condition isn't taking the action that's going to prevent either the continued contamination or the highest and best use that we might be able to contribute to. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Miguel Pittman, and then Mamita Dutta. Is there anyone else that wants to sign up before we move forward?
Good evening.
To speak. Sign up.
My name is Miguel Pittman. I live at 82 Orchard Street in the Hill. First, I want to say this was a long night. And I appreciate all the people that came before us and gave their opinion in terms of how they feel about this project. But I do have an assignment. I'm representing Ward 3, Hill North Management Team. We oppose this acquisition of the BoA Island and English Station. And there's several reasons, but I know my time is very limited. This is not about timing. This is not about asking for another study. This is about risk, serious financial risk, environmental, and legal risk being transferred to the taxpayer of New Haven. The property remains contaminated and under active legal dispute involving United Illuminating. There is no finalized remediation agreement. There is no binding commitment to clean the land to residential standards. There is no independent, itemized financial analysis, detailed total acquisition costs, demolition costs, remediation costs, and long-term operational expense. Yes, you are being asked to authorize acquisition and potentially eminent domain. This is not a responsible governance. We are hearing numbers like 25 million. Even with the presentation from the city, Mike Piscatelli said that he gave a number also, but at the end he said, I believe. And we all know, I believe means a hope. That is not a fact. Anyone familiar with contaminated industrial waterfront property knows they rarely come in under projections. And that's a fact, and that's proven from the past. If we remediate costs, escalates, the city owns that liability. If environmental standards are disputed, the city owns that liability. If the land remained unstable for years, the city owns that liability. And let's also talk about operational reality. New Haven struggles consistently maintaining existing parks and pools as we speak. We have facilities that close for repairs. We have deferred maintenance issues across the city. Expanding into complex waterfront facilities without proven operational capacity is not a strategic investment.
Your time is up.
It is compound long-term infrastructure. And my time ran out. I had quite a bit of this to say, but I'd like to close. If you just give me another 15 seconds, and I'm gonna jump to my last paragraph. Ward 3 support thoughtful redevelopment. Ward 3 support responsible public investment, but we do not support acquiring a contaminated, litigated property without guarantees, clarities, and facilities discipline. The risk outweighs the reward. We urge you to vote no on acquisition in eminent domain. Protect the taxpayers, protect the neighborhood, demand a plan that is financially sound, environmental secure, and fully transparent before moving forward. Thank you. And thank you for the extra time.
Mumita Duta. Did I say that?
Manita.
I'm
Welcome. Name and address for the record.
My name is Manmita Dutta, address 470 Whitney Avenue. Good evening, good night. I'm a resident and taxpayer in New Haven, and I'm here today in strong support of the proposal to acquire Ball Island and transform the former English Station power plant site into Mill River Park. I'm supporting this proposal for 4 reasons. Number 1, environmental justice. For nearly 100 years, this site has blocked New Haven residents from their own waterfront. Families in nearby neighborhoods have had to live next to a blighted, contaminated industrial site. Environmental justice means we stop asking working-class communities to live with toxic leftovers. It means we clean this land up, restore it, and return it to the public as something safe, healthy, and beautiful. Second, equity and water safety. And I'm speaking here also as a mother who's, I had a daughter who was very scared of the water. Swimming is a life-saving skill, and a public pool is not a luxury. Drowning is one of the leading causes of death among children. When families don't have safe, affordable places to swim, they also lose access to swim lessons, and that can have tragic consequences. Cities like New Haven deserve public pools just like our suburbs do. For decades, suburban communities invested in pools and private swim clubs, while many urban public pools declined. That created a 2-tier system, and New Haven should not be asked to live with less. Third, this park will help kids get offline. In the summer, families need safe places where children can be active, healthy, and connected without a screen. A waterfront park and pool mean joy, movement, and community, and a shared civic space for families who can't afford private clubs or summer travel. And finally, this is about economic revival. A premier riverfront park can help spark responsible development, new housing, new businesses, and more foot traffic for nearby corridors like Grand Avenue. It improves quality of life, strengthens the Mill River District, and supports the city's long-term tax base, helping fund the priorities we all care about. Simply put, this is not an either-or. We can meet essential needs and also invest in public spaces that uplift working families. This is how we turn a symbol of industrial neglect into a symbol of shared prosperity. I urge you to support the city's acquisition of Ball Island to allow for its redevelopment into Mill River Park and invite residents to help shape a waterfront that finally belongs to all of us. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to testify on this item? And for a second time, is there anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item? And for third and final ask, is there anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item?
Could he add something to what we previously said?
Don't close it.
You had spoken earlier, correct?
I just wanted to say that when I was in Stanford.
So hold on one second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, because I haven't closed the public portion, but I'll have you come up, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'm gonna move to close. You will be the final speaker. Thank you. You're gonna be my final speaker for this evening, because I had just, so we're closing after you, so. Very quickly.
Okay.
We're gonna finish with this gentleman. Thank you.
Oh, Paul Jaco, 64 Front Street. Just wanted to say that when I moved here from Stanford, when I lived in Stanford, there was a large industrial area on the water similar to this. Now they call it Harbor Point in South End, and it was privately redeveloped. It was Northeast Utilities had a lot of the property. Pitney Bowes had their factories there. Everything was torn down, and private developers turned it into, oh my God, there's probably like 3,000 apartments now, restaurants, like parks, private parks that anybody can use that went with the redevelopment. And I think a developer can come through and do this, and the city wouldn't have to take the liability responsibility and pull funding away from other city services to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, our public testimony is closed. Thank you all that were here and came out to speak on this item.
Madam Chair, motion to close the public portion.
Second.
The motion has, thank you.
There's a motion on the floor
To close.
close the public.
The item has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone abstain? Nays? Okay, the ayes have it. We are now closed.
Madam Chair,
Vice
I
Chair?
move that we move the first item that we had on tonight. Second.
The
First item.
So we have moved it on. First item is all
You're
set.
discharging the first item?
Correct.
So
We
you don't
just
need to-
started. Yeah, it's been a long.
Already
evening.
done with the first
So
item.
we are
Discharge, right.
handling.
So only on this
Boa,
one.
yes. We, over Rendente?
You need a motion on something, Madam Chair, if you're gonna have a discussion.
Yes. And then we're closing, yeah.
So, Madam Chair.
Vice Chair?
What are we doing, so we'll do?
You.
What do you wanna do, Mr. Alder, what are you trying to do so we can help you figure out the language? What do you wanna do?
You can see how we're doing.
Oh, that is.
So we want motion. We're gonna move this item.
We don't want to move this item. We want to,
Hold on.
What is it that you're trying to do? Then I can help you.
Hold on, because We close the public?
Yep,
And we're gonna move on.
you're in discussion right now.
We're in discussion.
Well, you need a motion, to discuss something, you're in discussion. Want to discuss.
On the item before us.
Or you- Go from the back, what do you want to do? What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to make a vote to the plan.
Don't know. Okay.
No, no. She wants to move.
Motion to.
She wants to move.
Madam Chair.
So if you all want to do that, you can set it up, you can,
Item for discussion. Yes, you can do that.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to move this item to discussion only.
Second.
The item has been moved to second. Discussion on the item before us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain? The motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first thank everybody who testified on both sides of this issue tonight. I've lived in Fairhaven my entire life in the shadow of English Station. There's no doubt in my mind that English Station is not only an eyesore, but a public health hazard. And let me just say that I love the idea of a waterfront park leading up to a new Mill River neighborhood rather than the salt piles, minus the pool, Giovanni. While the vision of a rejuvenated waterfront is compelling, the path presented to us today, in my opinion, is paved with too many ifs. We're being asked to overlook a possible $20 million funding gap, ignore a track record of failing to maintain our existing parks and pools, and dismiss the very real and very vocal concerns of the residents that this project claims to serve. When a community describes a public process as performative and their stated needs for housing and jobs are sidelined for a donor-aligned project, our duty as a committee is to hit the brakes. We cannot, in good conscience, assume 100% of the environmental liability for a site this contaminated without a clear written financial roadmap. And if contamination is found later above appropriate park and playground levels, families could claim the city knowingly put kids on land that was only cleared to commercial industrial standards, and that liability would fall on the city and not UI. So based on the extensive testimony that we've heard tonight, my recommendation would be to table this item to learn more about the viability of adaptive reuse, where we can invite presentations and learn how comparable they are. Let's not rush into this. Let's get it right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Deb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have thought about this for a very long time, as I am the alder for the ward that this sits in, and it has been here for 30 years, and it has not been cleaned up. I feel that where we are, and thank you to everybody who came out and testified and being with us so late tonight, but I do feel that after hearing all of this testimony and what we need to do to move forward is to clean this station up. So I would motion to yes.
To move.
To move the item.
Second.
The item has been, no? Which mover? You're moving?
I'm
Move the item, she got a second, so now it's discussion.
Now it's discussion.
On that one.
Discussion. On the item as in. And your.
Yes.
Well, no, we're in discussion right now, Mark, so.
Okay.
Now that all the colleagues are weighing in on your
I'm
motion.
sorry, so what are we?
No. So at this, so the item has been,
You move it.
you moved it and seconded.
You all in discussion
Right
Okay.
now-
All the Martinelli's motion.
Alderman Martinelli, I'm respecting that you are the alder of the ward and that you have made a motion to not have this sit for another several years and move this forward so that we can start the process of acquiring it and transforming it for the community that it sits in. And we are thankful for everyone who came to present. And this is just the beginning of many more.
That's correct.
So all those in favor?
You're asking if there's any other discussion?
Any other discussion on the item? Because it's getting late and.
You want to discuss? There's a motion. You track that motion.
Oh, I want to discuss.
It's up for discussion.
Okay. Alder Hubbard?
Good evening, everybody, and yes, it's getting late, so I'm going to be very brief. Chair, co-chair, my colleagues, I am in total favor of moving forward with this item. I am in full support of this item. A lot of testimony has been given tonight where I can agree and disagree on both ends. I am deeply invested into this. I am from Farm Courts neighborhood, and because of English Station, we were one of the areas that was affected with a lot of the asthma pollution, and also off of the highway where the sound barrier was also built. And part of the environmental justice committee my mom had also led to make sure English Station was held accountable and it also closed down. So to now, 30 plus years later, to have a plan to move forward for the better of the city. Yes, there is some pros and yes, there is some cons, but more pros than cons. And this is just one of many meetings that we will have that come before the committee and also for the board. So I am in full support of moving the item.
Yes. No.
So, hold on just 1 second, because I think hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. So. No, because I'm waiting on the order.
I said it in my statement, but I haven't done it.
So then let's move on to the next thing. Go ahead. Continue.
We are voting on the item. Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion on the item? Any further discussion on the item? I'm asking the audience on the table. No. Then we will move to decide if we're going to vote on the item. All those in favor of moving the item, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. So we're moving the item forward. Thank you. Thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you.
Need a motion, Madam Chair?
Oh.
Motion to adjourn.
The motion has been made to adjourn. All those in favor?
Second.
Second. We are adjourned.
Okay.